Welcome to Dudes on Movies. I'm your dude Scott.
I'm your dude Dave.
And today we're discussing 1980's The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick and starring Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson. But before we do that, let's talk about what we've been watching. Dave, what have you been watching?
Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker.
Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker.
Yes, or Night Warning if you lived in Indiana. I know.
Okay.
It's never promising when a movie has multiple regional titles, but
In the same country.
Yes, exactly. it was sort of like Killer Workout and Aerobicide, that same kind of idea. But it's an 80s horror movie, but it's also very dramatic and tackles issues. One of the main themes of the movie is teaching people in the early 80s that it's wrong to discriminate against gay people.
Truth.
And yeah, and I was really surprised that it went there. But whenever you hear the homophobic slurs in this film, it's always by the villains. And for a movie that long ago, that kind of attitude was pretty rare. So, look, everybody, I know, just like every time I've mentioned stuff like this before, there's a pretty good chance you're never going to see this movie. I get it, but that's okay. But it exists now. And if you ever decide to give it a shot, if you care about my recommendations, I can tell you it'll be worth your time.
Is it a bloody good time?
It is a bloody good time.
Okay.
Yes.
Sounds great, Everybody, don't sleep on Dave's recommendations, I'm telling you. They're usually extremely solid.
Thank you.
So, I caught a movie that came out, I think it was last year. It was Renfield. It's the movie where Nicolas Cage plays Dracula.
Uh-huh.
And so it sells itself, money coming in, right? The movie thinks it's funnier than it actually is. It's an over-the-top, like, action, horror, comedy type movie about Renfield, who is his familiar from the stories, played by Nicholas Hoult, who's pretty good in it. It's Nicholas Hoult,
Sure.
But he's sick and tired of being told what to do. Sick and tired of being controlled by Dracula, this narcissist. And he ends up going to therapy for codependency and stuff like that. And that's kind of the humor of it. And it's an interesting idea because it's true. That is the kind of relationship I guess that is.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what the movie's about. But it is basically, it's over the top and it gets extremely gory and violent. And I think it's supposed to be humorous, but I didn't find it funny. I just found it dumb.
Okay.
So I wouldn't recommend this movie, but there's an audience for it. That's for sure. But I mean, if you want to see Nicolas Cage being extremely Nicolas Cage, check this one out.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah. So now, Dave, let's continue on. It's horror month, right? So we've got to talk about scary movies. Let's talk about The Shining. Why don't you give everyone a synopsis?
You got it, yes. This is Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of Stephen King's 1977 novel in which a recovering alcoholic writer and his family take a job as the winter caretakers at a remote luxury hotel in Colorado. And while isolated in the hotel, the man grows increasingly unbalanced because he's facing writer's block and he's still fighting his addictions, and both he and his wife have a lot of unresolved psychological and emotional problems. And the couple's son is also clairvoyant, and because the hotel is possessed by spirits, there's a lot for everybody to contend with. So, guys, this is The Shining. You know what the movie's about. It's one of the most famous movies of all time, and I can't wait to go through it.
Exactly, Dave. Why don't you tell us why you picked this for Horror Month?
Sure. Somewhat famously, this movie scared me to death as a child.
Are you going to tell the story again?
I probably will have to. Yeah, I wrote about the experience on our old website, and I've told this story a million times. But, when I was about 10 years old, I thought I was really grown up and too old to go trick-or-treating, so I ended up going to dinner with my dad on Halloween night. And when we got home, he found our local TV station was screening The Shining, and God knows what possessed him to let me watch it, but he did. And he fell asleep maybe 20 minutes in, as dads tend to do, and I was essentially alone watching this movie, and it was a blood-freezing experience that's still one of my most vivid childhood memories. And I mean, I can laugh about it now, but back then it was serious stuff because I had trouble sleeping for days afterwards because little kids don't understand the world and they're not ready to handle movies like this.
I could see your face. Were you like Danny Lloyd? There's like,
yes, exactly. I'm just like in a rictus of fear. Yes. And I mean, I even had that same hairdo probably,
Probably a dumb haircut. that 70s holdover.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are some pictures of me like,
Yeah, like I think there's some of me in the late 80s
Yes.
with that. You know, it's a little thinned out because the 90s were coming,
Right.
but it was still pretty like bushy.
yeah, I mean,
Very Sasquatchy. You know?
everybody had it.
Yeah, I don't get it. I had volume.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how,
Yes.
but I did.
You had body in your hair. Imagine that. You know,
Probably from all the cheap shampoo with the chemicals in it.
probably with
Yeah.
all the VO5. Yeah.
Yes, yes. VO5. Is that still around?
I can't imagine it is. It can't exist outside of the 1980s.
Yeah, it was banned.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the good news is obviously I eventually grew up and I checked the book out from the library when I was in high school and I was all good. I was fully ready to process the information rationally and I didn't have any nightmares anymore. And I eventually watched the movie again and it became a personal favorite that I've seen a million times. And
Yeah.
this is another conversation that's been decades in the making.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's taken us this long to get to it.
Right.
And I know we kind of saved some of the really good horror films for October, right?
did,
Like
yes.
we sprinkle them in throughout the year sometimes, but usually our favorites we save for this time of year.
Yes.
So I'm glad we finally get to talk about it. And I think the last time I saw this was on, I don't know, it was on my birthday like 5 or 6 years ago. I
Okay.
think they had a screening of it at the local theater, and I went and saw it with some friends and stuff. And man, it was really cool to see it on the big screen.
I bet. Yeah.
I don't like love this movie, Dave, but I do like it. I think it's great, but I don't have the same kind of relationship with it as I do like other movies and stuff, right?
Okay.
But like I've seen it probably half a dozen times.
Got it.
But it's weird. I don't want to say it's like my Blade Runner relationship because I really don't like that movie. But I've told you I'm like attracted to that movie, right? Like I'm drawn towards it, even though I don't really like it.
I know.
I'm drawn towards this, but I do like this movie, but I don't love it. But something about it just makes me want to watch it again.
Does the Blade Runner connection have anything to do with the shots that were repurposed for the opening and closing?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I doubt it. And then whoever's in it playing Lloyd, he's also in
Yes,
Blade Runner.
Joe Turkel.
Yeah, he's in there. So,
Right.
But I don't think that has anything to do with it.
Okay, got it.
But I mean, this is a great movie, right?
Yeah.
The scary parts about it isn't really like any of the violence or anything. It's just the weird psychological mind trip that Jack Nicholson goes through.
Yes.
And the horror that Shelley Duvall has to deal with. Just what she does. I think her performance, both of them, but primarily hers, like really make this movie scary.
Right, and everybody can relate to, even if you've never been a hotel caretaker, you already know and fear cabin fever, even if you've never experienced it.
Yeah.
And I mean, like the idea of just being in a place trapped with somebody, even someone you really love, and
Right.
You will kill each other eventually because something, especially if you're in a hotel that's haunted.
I know, and even though you have plenty of space to be
Yeah.
in, you're still going to be around each other, and you're still going to get interrupted while you're trying to do something. Still going to
Jesus.
happen, Jack
Jesus.
Nicholson.
Oh my god. Ugh.
But also, like just the hotel being huge and empty, right? Like
Right.
the liminal space here is just insane. Like
It is.
People naturally have a fear of that, just big, empty openness.
I know, like somehow that's worse than if they were in a one-bedroom apartment together.
I think it's because you can see like what's immediately around you and control it.
Right.
More than like, oh, across 100 feet over there's this giant doorway and 100 windows. Like, 10 militiamen could jump through and attack me.
That's true,
10
right.
zombies can come in and get me.
My God, yes.
What am I going to do?
Oh,
if I'm in
wow.
this small room, hey, at least I can know what's going on.
Yeah, you know what's coming.
Yeah, so
Right.
But yeah, the hotel itself, just I guess it's a character itself.
It definitely
Yeah.
is. It's the fourth protagonist, really, because I mean everything that's going on there is I don't know, like when Mr. Halloran says, some people shine and some places shine.
Yeah.
It's a concise way of talking about like, yeah, there are ghosts that we carry around, and places are just as alive as we are.
Yeah. That's awesome when he
Yeah.
tells Danny that.
Mhm.
So I mean, this movie, It came out in the 80s, 1980, right? So it's
1980,
technically
yeah.
an 80s horror movie, but
Yeah.
it really feels more like a 70s horror movie, if you ask me.
It's like when we categorized like specifically 80s horror last week. Like this does not fit in with,
Right.
Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker.
No,
You know?
no, not at all. This,
Right.
This isn't Reanimator.
Exactly.
This is a psychological horror movie.
Yes. And it's a Stanley Kubrick film of which he only made 12 movies because everything had to be,
Yeah.
it's well documented on this show. Like, obviously, Stanley Kubrick, one of the world's greatest filmmakers, but an impossible man.
Yeah, and you could never do. I mean, I guess ultimately you could do what he wanted.
Right.
But it took you 100 takes to do it.
Mhm.
It took you all day to do one shot because he was that exacting.
And I've read many conflicting reports about the infamous numbers of takes that he demanded for certain
Yeah.
scenes.
Yeah.
And there's the dolly shot where Ullman shows Jack and Wendy the gold room when they first get there that allegedly required 66 takes.
Oh my gosh.
There was the scene where Wendy was walking backward upstairs, telling Jack to back off when she's swinging the bat at him, which took 127. And then there were some accounts of 148 takes on the scene where Danny talks to Mr. Halloran about Shining, with
Yeah.
Scatman Carruthers eventually breaking down crying.
Yeah, like Stanley, what do you want from me?
Right.
Literally crying because of this.
Yes.
And it's funny after this, I know Scatman Crothers went and did a Clint Eastwood movie for his next movie. And Clint Eastwood famously does one take,
Yes.
and that's it.
Yes.
You want to waste everyone's time? Yeah. Imagine going from Kubrick to Eastwood.
I can't imagine that because it's like, wait, what?
Still.
Okay, that was okay, Clint.
Exactly.
all
Yeah.
right,
That's
got it.
Ed Wood.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
one take. That's it.
Huh.
Yeah. I think that Clint Eastwood joke I made, he actually told Matt Damon that because Matt Damon wanted another take on, I think, Invictus.
Okay.
He wanted to do another take. And he's like, why? You wanted to waste everyone's time to Matt Damon. Which is freaking great, dude.
That is excellent. Yes.
But yeah, the movie has a lot of that behind the scenes craziness. And I'm
Right.
sure we'll talk more about it as we get into it. Which, do you want to?
Let's get into
Let's
it, dude.
talk
Yes.
about The Shining. We get the famous opening shot of this VW Beetle
Yep.
driving through the mountainside.
Yes, and the opening credits were filmed around Glacier National Park in Montana, which is standing in for Colorado, specifically St. Mary Lake. And it's like just the most stunning nature you've ever seen.
Beautiful.
And like they're using this helicopter to film, Jack Torrance's Volkswagen Beetle, in nature like this. And man, it's just like the lake and the mountains surrounding it and the mist.
Yeah.
And knowing that you have to like drive through all this just to get to this place that you're going to be stuck at once winter comes.
Yeah, because they mentioned a lot about how isolated this place is, right?
Right.
But this really lets you see it.
Yep.
Because I think he sees one car on the road as he's driving up there the whole time. And the scene is, it goes on for a couple minutes,
It does,
actually,
yes.
as the credits play. So it's not like Rock and Roll Nightmare where the van just drives for 10 minutes at the beginning
Yes.
to pad the runtime.
Right.
Like, this has a purpose.
It does,
It's the
yes.
credit sequence. But yeah, it's cool to see it establishing the isolation that's to come.
Right.
And like you said earlier, this footage was also used in Blade Runner for the famously bad ending that got tacked on.
Yes.
The good ending, quote unquote.
Right.
Kubrick gave it to Ridley Scott, though, like willingly, because he loved Alien.
Which is like, it's always one of those things where you're expecting one reaction from somebody and you'd be like, oh, he's just going to give it to me? Really? Stanley Kubrick?
Yeah, I think he said just don't use the same shots, because
All
he
right.
had he probably had 4,000 hours of helicopter
He
footage.
did. Oh my God. Just this archive of B-roll.
He probably filmed the entire trip. He had to get different helicopters, refuel, and everything.
multiple takes of it, I'm sure. Yes.
Oh God. Yeah, many takes of this. But yeah, we get the interview on the screen.
Right.
The movie is kind of interspersed with these title cards.
Yes, and it's weird with the title cards because they're a little inconsistent and they don't really mean anything.
Yeah.
And sometimes it'll just be like Thursday.
Yeah.
And we don't know that we didn't know what we were looking at previously was a Wednesday or not.
Yeah, like my favorite is like it'll say Tuesday and then you see like 2 shots of nothing happening, and it's like Wednesday.
I know.
It's
Yeah.
like, okay,
right.
what was the point of that?
Exactly. Yes.
But it sets up like this weird feeling for the audience, right? Like, why are we jumping around like this? And just really didn't see anything except maybe like kind of a creepy shot
Yeah,
of
right.
like them walking around or something.
I guess it does kind of enhance the idea of like madness setting in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great way to say it because it's like almost like you're losing track of time in a way.
Right.
And just seeing how, I guess, mundane it is there too, just compounds with how creepy things are.
Yes.
So, but yeah, he's at the interview.
Yes, he's at the interview with Mr. Ullman, and Mr. Ullman is the manager of the hotel, and Jack Torrance, Jack Nicholson's character, is here to interview for the caretaker's job, and the hotel, we're told, shuts down between April and I'm sorry, all through, like, it shuts down in October and it reopens in April.
Yeah, so it's shut down for the whole winter season,
Yes.
fall, winter, and early spring, I guess.
Yes.
So because it's so desolate there, and there's so much bad weather, snowstorms, risk of avalanches, and just like the one windy road on these cliff sides to get there, no one can get there.
Right.
The hotel owner, Ullman, says, we thought about it. The skiing, would be amazing, but it would cost so much just to keep the roads clear. It's not even feasible.
Right.
So that's the kind of place we're at.
And I mean, like, okay, I'll just ask at the top of the show, would you take this job?
I'd take it.
If it was just you, whether you had a family or it was just you would.
I don't know if I'd take it if I was by myself.
Okay.
I don't know why.
You'd rather be with
If I had someone there with me, I'd probably take it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know. What about you?
I've been asking myself this question a long time, but
Like if we had to go up there and podcast for the winter,
See-
like, whoa.
I thought about that before we started recording. If it was you and me in there, like, it would become essentially like whatever happened to Baby Scott. I couldn't deal with it.
Oh shit. Well, I'm not taking you with
Well,
me.
exactly, and I fear that. I can't get it out of my head. Like something drastic would happen where one of us would end up dead, or one of us would
I'd have a mic cord wrapped around my neck.
or I would. I don't know. It could be Baby
That's
Dave.
true. Yeah. Dave, something like that would never happen to me.
Yes. See,
I gave him a little Jack Nicholson look when I said that.
Yes, and see,
Yeah.
even you joking about it, it's still chilling. We're not in 1979 Colorado, but like the idea of it happening is real. And I wouldn't want to drive a Volkswagen up that mountain road.
Oh, hell no. Not even one of those snowcats they're driving.
Absolutely
that thing
not.
could barely make it.
Jesus, man, I the idea of like making that journey, and he's doing it in that contraption.
Yeah, right.
no way.
Yeah, no thanks. But yeah, he wants to come up here so he can spend the season writing his book without
Yes.
distractions. But of course, he's got to bring his wife and kid with him, which to him are his distractions. We've come to find out pretty quickly.
And at this moment too, like Jack is very much he's an alcoholic who's on the wagon right now. We don't know that at this moment, but he's essentially just a normal guy, and he's a school teacher, and yeah, he's outlining a writing project because he's also a writer in addition to teaching school, and he says, yeah, this is a perfect job for me because I'll have peace and quiet to do this project.
Yep.
And Ullman is impressed, and they're going to give him the job. And we cut over to the apartment complex where his family lives, and it's Wendy, the great Shelley Duvall, and Danny Lloyd is Danny.
Yep.
And they're having lunch together, watching TV, and we see that Danny has this thing that he does, because Wendy asks Danny, hey, is Tony excited about going to the Overlook? And he holds up his finger, and he communicates this way. That's how Tony talks to people.
Yeah, he like bends his finger down and goes, "No, I don't want to go to the hotel."
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
Mrs. Torrance.
all right, little kid.
Okay. Now you're the only parent here. So tell me, how do you handle something like this?
I don't know. I've never had to really deal with that.
Okay.
But I would probably let it go for a little bit.
Okay.
And then once it became Danny Lloyd levels, I'd probably call a specialist.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
I've had a feeling, and thankfully Wendy does, only after he collapses in the bathroom.
Right.
But, you know, still.
Yeah. So this little Tony guy, man,
He's an agitator.
he's creepy.
Yes. He's the little boy who lives in my mouth, is what Danny tells us.
All right. So if my son said that to me, I'd be like, all right, we're calling the exorcist right now.
Because we might have a Captain Howdy. You don't know.
Oh, God. Yeah. See, what's with these little kids and their imaginary demons?
I know.
Come on.
I know. It's really troubling, and it never ends well.
So the lesson here is if your kid has an imaginary friend, take caution. Call the authorities immediately.
That's the weird part, is that like now it's thought of as, I mean, I haven't heard about people having imaginary friends anymore. I mean, I'm unplugged from schools. I don't know.
I'm sure they still exist. They have to,
okay.
right? Like it's just like a human psychological event,
Yeah,
right? That just
yeah.
happens, right? And
Right.
they say here it happened when he like started going to school. Like,
Yeah.
how old is he? He's like 6 or 7 at the most, right?
Yeah, at the most.
Yeah, maybe 7. The psychologist who does come over says something about that, like, because when she finally finds out that Tony lives in his mouth, she starts asking questions like, okay, so what? When did this start?
Right.
You know, did this start after the event, which we'll talk about in a second? And it's real. No, when he started school. So he's been doing this for years,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And they moved from Vermont, right?
Yep.
So how long ago did they move?
Just about like less than a year ago.
Okay, so and it didn't happen with the move,
Right.
Right? Okay. So yeah, this kid's been creepy for a long time.
He's been creepy for a long time. That's true. Yeah, and we see him in the bathroom then like he's brushing his teeth and he's talking to Tony. He's looking in the mirror and like having a full conversation with this
Yeah.
imaginary friend.
Yeah, why don't you want to go, Tony? Why don't you tell me?
I just don't.
Oh, Dave. God. And like we have to say, like, over all of these scenes there's like this ominous dread that's just
Right.
somehow captured on the film.
I know, and I tried to do it like in an impersonation of the music earlier, where it's
Yeah.
just like, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes the score isn't even music; it's just noises.
Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit of like that really scary sounds that we have in 2001 during the Stargate sequence.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
And
And it has some of the stuff from The Thing, John
Yes.
Carpenter's The Thing, like the spidery web sounding
Right.
things. Like, yeah, it's just the score itself is extremely creepy.
right, it is.
But I think just the way the film is shot also just makes it scary.
We start in his bedroom, and then the bathroom is like across the hall.
Yeah.
And it goes from the bedroom, a really slow push in, like a dolly shot into Danny, and we don't even like see his face until just a minute later. There's a quick dissolve, and then we go in the bathroom and we actually see him in the mirror.
Yeah.
And Danny demands that Tony show him what he's afraid of, and we see what Tony shows him, which is this vision of it's the famous elevator
Yeah.
scene, with where the vestibule outside the elevator fills with blood from the elevator.
Yeah.
And it's a really powerful image, obviously. And as like students of just as cinephiles, your mind goes to like how tough it is to capture such a thing.
Yeah.
And I think the scariest part, though, and I only realized it on this viewing, is Danny's face after he sees the vision.
Yes. I'm glad you said that.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
just this utter, like, deer in a headlight shock on his face.
Right.
And he's almost like shaking his head a little back and forth with his mouth agape and his eyes wide open, staring into the distance of nothingness.
Right.
It's pretty terrifying.
And there's just this abyss behind him. He's not even in the bathroom anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. He does the same thing when he sees the twins on his big wheel.
Yes.
Later. And like I actually made a note here, like his performance is excellent.
This
Like,
kid is really good.
So good. I would say I can't say he's the same level as Jack Nicholson or Shelley Duvall because
Sure.
they're just in outer space in this
Yes,
movie. Like
they are.
No one can ever act better than these two performances.
I know. Really strong.
Yes, but he's up there.
Right.
Yeah, great kid acting for sure.
Absolutely.
And Kubrick, though, apparently was really nice with this kid.
That was the best news you can get from the production notes,
Yeah.
is that like Stanley was like incredibly protective of him, and made sure not only to be nice to him, but he wouldn't let him even like watch the movie.
He didn't even know he was in a scary movie,
No.
right? He thought he was in some like drama film,
Right.
And everything was shot without him, and like the scenes he was in, they had to use like stand-in stuff or
Yes.
fake lines or whatever. And there's the scene when he comes in to the big foyer or whatever where Jack Nicholson's typing,
Right.
And Shelley Duvall finds him and thinks that Jack hurt him.
Where he's got the bruises.
He's got the bruises. That's a puppet that she's carrying.
Yeah.
While she's yelling like lines about it. And I guess that works for the scene. It doesn't look fake. I never
doesn't.
even noticed. And I think what helps is we saw him walking. He's kind of catatonic, right?
Yes.
He's not moving at all. He's very kind of stiff. He's sucking his thumb. And so her holding this child that's just completely still and not moving, that's how he was when she grabbed him. So
Of course.
it makes total sense.
Right, and they cut around it a lot to where you'd never think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Danny Lloyd's awesome in this movie, everybody.
Yep.
So yeah, we see the blood gushing down through the elevators, and which I think they only did 3 takes of that, Dave.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I would have thought that like that one would have been, and I mean, I guess I'm always ready to hear the worst about Stanley Kubrick. So
Well, it apparently took a year to get the shot though, because it took like 9 weeks to set up or some shit like that.
holy crap.
Because it's a real hotel lobby or
mean-
a set that's actual size.
That's the thing.
You know,
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up actually, because like the
hundreds of gallons of blood.
I know, and the impressive I mean, to call it the interior sets here impressive. That's not giving it enough credit. I mean, they were constructed at Elstree Studios in England, and they were based on the Ahwahnee Hotel in Yosemite. I mean, and they built this thing like it is a full scale like hotel interior, like a fancy hotel interior.
Yeah.
When you go around the corners and everything, there's like multiple doors. It's all carpeted. I mean, I realize they probably didn't have like actual hotel rooms behind those doors except for room 237.
Yeah.
But even still, I mean, they took their time to make it look like a real hotel. There's an ice machine there, and
Yeah.
then the kitchen area that looks like a real place.
Oh my god! And the entranceway is huge.
Yes,
you know.
the grand ballrooms and there were 2 hotel exteriors. One was the facade that they built at Elstree that they cover with snow and use for a couple sequences, and then there's the real hotel in Oregon called the Timberline Lodge that they used for like the establishing shot after the beetle gets up the mountain.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really amazing like movie magic going on in this film.
Yeah. So Danny sees that and he passes out.
Yep.
And right before he passes out and sees all the creepy shit, like Tony tells him that his dad's about to call and tell his mom
Right.
he got the job.
Right.
Which is really, really creepy because then it happens.
I know.
So we know there's more to Tony than just an imaginary friend.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, we cut to him like waking up or like he's in bed and Shelley
Right.
Duvall has like got him in bed. He passed out from what happened in the bathroom.
Yes, and she brought in a psychiatrist who does a house call, and she starts asking him questions about
What do you remember?
Right.
What's going on? She asked him about Tony.
Yep.
And ultimately, what does she say? Does Tony tell you to do things?
Yes.
And he says, I don't want to talk about Tony anymore. And I'm like, okay, get the straitjacket out. And get it out.
Massive red flag, dude. I don't want to talk about Tony anymore.
Come on.
Man, I know. It's that is really troubling.
But yeah, poor kid, though. Like, he's going through these traumatic things, right?
Yes, of
So,
course.
Poor Danny.
And the doctor is very good and everything. I mean,
Yeah.
she's a good
Yeah.
person, and she's asking the right questions. And Ann Jackson plays her, and like she eventually tells Dan, "Okay, I want you to lay down here, and you have to rest for the rest of the day." Do I have to? Yes, you do.
Mm-hmm.
So then they leave, and they go out to the living room, and it's just the adults talking. And
Yeah.
I think she suspects some stuff, the doctor.
Yeah.
And she's right. There is a history of abuse here. There was at least one incident where Jack, when Danny was like 2 years old, he was messing around in Jack's office and he did something with his papers, and Jack went to grab him to get him out of the way.
Mhm.
And when he did, it separated Danny's shoulder.
Yeah.
And the way she Well, the way Wendy first explains it is, oh, well, we hadn't seen anything since his injury. Oh,
Yeah.
well, how did he get injured? And then she has to tell that story.
Yeah.
And it's the way a woman, in that situation who's scared and doesn't want the outside world to know that her husband might be an abuser.
Yeah, she's rationalizing it,
Yes.
right? And you can tell, God bless Shelley Duvall, like her performance is so freaking good.
I know, man. I know.
And you can tell right away that she has a hard time believing what she's saying.
Of course.
And she's like, well, it's just one of those things, you just grab a kid's arm hundreds of times, and this time you're just a little too strong, Of course, she starts the story while he was out drinking,
Yeah.
and immediately there's a red flag for
Yep.
you. Like,
Right.
yeah, and now he promised he'd never drink again. And he hasn't drank for 5 months, which later we find out that the event happened 3 years ago. And he hasn't drank for 5 months. So he's probably gone on and off a little bit.
Probably
I'm
so.
guessing. And Shelley Duvall has just been kind of dealing with it.
Yeah.
And just saying, well, it'll be better. It'll be, talking it away from her, and just staying in the situation and dealing with it. I feel so bad for her character.
I know, because even if there haven't been any other instances of like physical abuse toward her or Danny, he has probably many times just come home drunk and done kind of the stuff that we see later in the movie.
Yeah, I'm sure this isn't the first time he's yelled at her.
Absolutely not.
It's probably happened hundreds of times
Yes,
before.
exactly.
God.
Yeah.
I love the way that is revealed in his character, right?
I know.
Like it's so well done. He starts out, you can kind of tell immediately though, he's very annoyed by his wife.
And it's weird with Jack Nicholson. His career is unique in that he became one of the biggest movie stars of all time by playing mostly unsympathetic characters.
Mm-hmm.
I've thought about everything I've seen him in recently and realized that like so many of his roles were these artistic or authoritative men who think they're better than you and they have no respect for women.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's just his whole career.
Yeah, I can't think of one movie where he's just kind of a normal straight man.
I think The King of Marvin Gardens is about as close to it gets.
Yeah.
And even in that, he's kind of a lanky weirdo.
And it sucks because I'm glad you said that, because that's always been my image of who Jack Nicholson is,
Yeah.
right? And I'm thinking, why do we love this guy so much? It makes me think, is he like this in real life? Because that's all he plays.
I mean, it's hard to know because the only thing that makes me think that he's not is I remember hearing Rob Reiner talk about when he was directing him in A Few Good Men.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were doing like take after take, he was like giving it his all, and it was when Colonel Jessup was on the stand.
Yeah, right.
And he, after like the sixth take, he, I guess, pulled Jack Nicholson aside and said, "Hey, Jack, listen, we haven't done your close-up yet, so maybe you want to save some of this for when,
Yeah.
And instead, Jack just said, "Well, no, Rob, I'm an actor. And,
Yeah.
I love when I have good material, and I love to give a great effort, And
Yep.
I was like, oh, okay, so he's...
Yeah,
cool.
And I mean, I haven't heard anything about him
No.
being like this in
No.
real life, right? Like, so I doubt he is.
It's just like Bobby Dupea and Jack Torrance and Colonel Jessup. It comes real natural to him, even if he's not like that somehow.
Yeah. He just does it well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen some behind the scenes stuff, and anytime you hear him talking, it's Jack Nicholson, so he's got that mannerism and
Yes, he
that
does.
voice, so it's kind of hard to separate it from the characters. But the way what he says doesn't match with his character's behaviors.
It's weird. Yeah. And I guess you watched that short documentary that Vivian Kubrick shot.
Yeah, I've seen that a couple times.
Okay. Yeah. And it's one of the rare times that Jack Nicholson that I can think of where he sat down for an interview. Because, I mean, I can't think of many other times where it's happened.
Yeah.
But in addition to him doing that, he also, like, in his interactions with Vivian, he's being real flirtatious with her, and he's acting like the kind of rakish Jack Nicholson.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not being the characters that we're talking about. He's just being a charming smartass.
Yeah.
And
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and he gets away with it because he's Jack Nicholson.
The charming smartass. That's the best way to describe it. That's, you know what? I have the same thing with Bill Murray. Like
Okay,
like
yes.
the charming smartass.
Yeah.
That's Bill Murray.
It is. It is
Okay.
definitely him.
Yeah. I'll take Jack Nicholson over Bill Murray though.
I
That's
will.
my choice.
I think he's the superior actor, and
I agree.
also Like we have heard Bill Murray is kind of a shithead, so that's
Yes,
the other part.
That's
of it.
true.
Right?
Well, I guess we need to do a Bill Murray movie to get more involved with him at some
we
point.
do. I don't think we've had him on the show.
All right. Well, we'll think about it.
Right.
All right. Let's get back to The Shining.
Why not? Yeah.
Also, during the scene with the psychologist, her ash on her cigarette gets about 4 inches long.
Dude, I'm so glad you
became
noticed
a
that.
meme. I think.
So, yes. I don't know how she did that, but she makes the whole speech about Jack breaking Danny's arm, and her smoke has this long cylindrical ash on it.
It's literally like almost the entire cigarette.
Yes.
Which I think that's a great visual thing.
Right.
Great visual storytelling, right? Because she's not even thinking about the cigarette. She's just been focused on this story the whole time. And just like having the ash hanging there, the audience is like, dude, it's going to fall.
Oh, I know, exactly.
It just like makes the audience more tense.
She's going to burn a hole in that jumper.
Like the tension is huge.
Right.
So yeah, we cut to them driving to the hotel. And yes, Jack is in the car and he's kind of annoyed at the passengers he has.
You should have finished your breakfast.
Right. But then he also kind of gets more lighthearted a little bit.
Yeah.
Because he starts talking about the Donner Party.
With his 6-year-old kid.
Yeah. And he's like, it's okay, Mom. I saw it on TV. And then he gets that smart-ass Jack Nicholson again. See, it's okay. He saw it on TV. It's like, oh, my God, dude. Just drive off the cliff and murder them already.
You know you want to.
Seriously, you could tell in this scene, this movie is not going to end well.
Because it's just like, no matter what happens, I guess now that we're talking about it, I know he could play something other than what we've talked about. You know, it's just that with those eyebrows that are in triangles
and the smile.
Oh
dude.
Man, yeah, it's so much.
I'll tell you what. After I watched the movie, I was trying to get my eyebrows to do his thing.
How'd you do?
Horribly. I was like making faces in the mirror. I could not get the Jack Nicholson look at all. I did it for a good minute. Not embarrassed to say it.
That's great.
Yeah. I was like trying to think maybe I can be him for Halloween or something.
Yeah.
No, I couldn't pull it off. Ain't gonna work.
It's hard,
I
right?
can maybe get the voice, but not the look.
The only time it ever like kind of there was a facsimile of it was Christian Slater.
Exactly.
You know. And he was roundly criticized for it.
See, I can't even do a Christian Slater.
It's hard. They're both tough.
Yes, they are. But yeah, we get to the hotel and they get the big tour, and everyone there is kind of packing up and leaving because it's the last day.
Yep.
You know, all the staff, all the crew, everyone there, they're going home for the season.
Yes, and Ullman comes over with Watson, and they get Jack, and they're gonna go give the tour and everything, and you know we cut over to Danny in we're called the games room.
I was like, oh, he's gonna play Xbox, right? No.
Yeah.
It's like darts,
Exactly.
you know. Which
There's
I don't
like
know
some-
why my brain jumped there.
Yeah.
I'm an idiot now, I
It's
guess.
1979, dude. Yeah, no Game Boys, no nothing.
Maybe Pong.
there could have been a Pong machine.
Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, he's playing darts and maybe some snooker later.
Dude, I would love to be in that games room, man. I love darts. I love billiards. I love all that stuff.
All that stuff would be
Yeah.
fun, sure.
Yeah.
But he has his first vision. It's day one, and the hotel's already messing with him.
Oh, man. And he sees the twin girls, everybody. You've seen them. You know who they are.
Yep.
Standing there in their blue dresses, being really creepy.
And did you read that the actresses aren't even twins?
I heard that, yeah.
They're 2 years apart. Like exact doubles from the same family.
You know, me and my brother, people thought we were twins for a while.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, when we were
Okay.
like younger in grade school.
Okay.
Because we were about the same height for a couple of years, I
Okay.
think. And then we looked the same. We had that same stupid haircut I was talking
Of
about
course,
earlier, you know.
right.
And my mom would dress us the same.
Oh my God, my mom dressed me and my brother the same too.
We had the same neon windbreakers that she. It was 1991. We had this dumbass haircut from the 70s. Yeah. And I was 2 years older than him, and they
Right.
thought we were twins.
Man, oh God, it's all rushing back to me. I remember we had a couple of like identical Legionnaire hats too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah. I'm glad those days are over.
Yes.
You cannot confuse me and my brother for twins anymore.
Yeah, you don't look the same
There's
anymore.
No way.
Right.
But yeah, They go and they get the tour. There's a big hedge maze. You know, they mentioned that the building was built on an Indian burial ground.
Jesus,
like, is that where
guys.
this started?
I mean, yes. Yes. Short
Okay.
answer, yes.
Okay.
I mean, you like take away someone's graveyard and you disrespect the dead.
Yeah.
You of course there's going to be like hell to pay.
Yeah, for real. I don't care if you decorated the hotel
Oh
in
my
their
God.
customs.
I know.
We're gonna get you.
Yeah, that's the other part of it exactly. Is that like, oh, so that the white man comes in, like desecrates their ancestors, and then they hang up all this art to like, oh, we're paying tribute because we're in Colorado, and you know yeah, okay, you took their land.
You know how you could pay tribute?
Yeah, that's
Don't
right.
take their land and kill them.
You fucking bastards. Jesus.
Yep. It looks nice though.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it looks
yes.
great.
I mean, you imagine even back then they're charging $2,000 a night.
Yeah.
You know, and God only knows what the presidential suite costs.
Oh, man.
And like when Ullman's giving him the tour, like Wendy's seeing all the pictures on the wall and like, oh yeah, well we've had 6 European kings have stayed here,
Yeah.
all the best people, he says.
Yep.
Jesus,
All the
dude.
best people. It's such a bullshit manager line.
It is. Yes.
Yeah. We're gonna fool everyone into thinking this place is great. Only the best come here.
Yes.
Yeah. And then they go into the Golden Ballroom, which is this big ballroom,
Yep.
all gold and pink, which are her favorite colors, she says.
Uh-huh.
And there's a bar, and they mention they don't have the alcohol. They take it out during the winter. And then Jack says, "We don't drink." Which I love that line, because you know what he's thinking? I want a fucking drink.
Yeah. Already.
But my wife won't let me.
Oh God. It gets real ugly real quick.
Yeah, dude.
Yep.
And then we get to meet Scatman Crothers, Dick Halloran. He's the head chef of the hotel.
Yep.
So he gives a tour of the kitchen facilities to Shelley Duvall and to Danny Lloyd. Like, let's check it out. So they do that, and then Jack goes off with Ullman and does whatever they do.
Right.
And we get a scene of Halloran giving them the tour, but he's talking to Wendy about all the stuff. And then he kind of looks at Danny, because Danny looks at him really weird, and the shots are real close up on their faces, cutting between the two. And he looks at him as he continues to talk to Wendy, but then we hear a voiceover of him talking directly to Danny. You know, like, how do you like ice cream, Doc? Is
Want
that
some
what he
ice
says?
cream, Doc?
Yep. And apparently Doc is his nickname.
Right.
And no one had said it.
And Wendy, when they leave the freezer area, she'd heard Halloran call Danny Doc outside of the telepathy.
Yeah.
And she just asked him full on, well, why'd you know his name was Doc? Oh, well, I don't know. I must have heard him call you, or must have heard you call him that.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't. Oh, well, he looks like a Doc. And then he does like a Bugs
Yeah.
Bunny impersonation.
Doc?
Yep, right. It's real cute. And
He's almost creepy, I'll just say.
Oh, yeah,
He's this
yeah.
close to being a creepy old man.
because he is an old man,
Yeah.
and like he's being very friendly,
Overly
like this.
friendly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, any time that like someone's paying that much attention to a child, you're like,
Yeah.
But yeah,
I don't think he comes off as a creep. I'm just saying he's almost there.
well,
right?
Yeah, we're very aware of these issues these days.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But then they go and get ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just Halloran and Danny now just getting ice cream. Because I think Wendy has to go do something else.
Yeah,
with
because
Jack and
Wendy
them.
goes with
Yeah.
Jack, and they go over to like go to the boiler room and see how to heat the hotel.
Right, because they're supposed to do like chores and
Yep.
maintenance and stuff to keep the hotel runnable for when the spring comes.
Yep.
You know, they can't just shut it all down. They have
Right.
to keep it going a little. So that's why they're here, really.
Right.
And so they get ice cream, and the two of them, and this is where Scatman Crothers explains what shining is. Kind of the ability to do special things and to communicate in special ways.
And he says that he first knew about it because in his family, him and his grandmother had the talent, and he said that they could sit there in a room together and have a whole conversation without speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And he figured this kid was like force sensitive when he first
Yeah,
walked
right,
in.
yeah.
He knew
He's the
about
chosen
it.
one.
Exactly. So he like revealed himself. And
Yeah, his metachlorians are off the chart, everybody. But no, he knows he's got the power,
Right.
and Danny says, Tony won't let me talk about it.
yeah.
And so we get more creepy Tony stuff. And he says that Tony shows him things. Like, he'll go to sleep and sees things, but he wakes up and he can't remember. And then Halloran's like, well, did he show you anything about this hotel? Kind of getting into. I think he's worried that because Danny can shine, he's going to see all these horrible things that are here.
Right.
So that's kind of what he's getting at.
And he also, like we mentioned earlier, he tells Danny that like sometimes places shine, and yeah, he's worried that like Danny's gonna be, and he to make it so that he won't be scared. He tells him every time you see something, just know that it's not real. It's not real. And
Right.
It just pictures in a book, and it's a good thing to tell a kid, but
It is.
You know, like even the smartest kid like Danny is still going to be very scared and traumatized when they see some of the things that the hotel shows them.
Naturally. I'm sure even Halloran himself gets scared of seeing these things.
Yes, I can't believe he works here.
Right? I'd be working somewhere that doesn't shine.
Exactly. And he lives in Miami, we find out
I
later.
know, right?
There's
Like,
plenty of great restaurants
love his
down
bedroom,
there.
man.
Oh, man, with the erotic paintings.
Yes. One above the TV, one above the headboard.
Really good stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, the scene ends with Danny asking him like if he's scared of this place and
Right.
stuff. And he says, "You're scared of room 237." Or something like that.
He does, yeah.
And then he's like, "There's nothing in there. There's nothing in that room, Danny. So stay out."
Bad move, Dick.
You know how you get a kid to
Oh,
do something?
jeez,
You
man.
tell him not to do it.
And like everything was going fine in this conversation.
I know.
You had a good back and forth, and now you just like all of a sudden pull rank on him.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, immediately, yeah. We know 237's going to happen.
Right.
That's for sure.
And one thing I didn't notice until this viewing, again, it's a part of, like doing stuff for the show. Like, they must have given Danny Lloyd ice cream right before this one take because he's got like chocolate ice cream on the corners of his mouth.
Yep. I noticed it too.
Yep.
It was there the whole shot though. Like
It
the whole
was,
scene.
yeah, that's
you know?
true. Right.
Kubrick is very meticulous about that. So
Yeah,
I'm sure
and-
it was
and-
like there's got to be a little ice cream.
I just realized too, this was one of the scenes that like took a million takes.
Yeah.
And so they must have given Danny one bowl of ice cream and then like had some makeup person come over and give him a little like, ice cream makeup for the other 165 takes.
Well, I wonder if Danny had to do those takes or if Scatman had to do the takes because they don't shoot
Yeah.
them as a two shot very often.
That's true.
It's
They-
kind of a just a close
They break
up
it
on
up.
one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they cut between. So
Yeah, that's right. This was all Scatman Crothers.
I'm sure Danny, he had it easy. He only did 30 takes,
Right, that's right.
Yeah. So we cut from this to a month later, which is what the title card says.
Yes,
a month
a
later,
month later.
literally. And really, nothing happens in this like couple minutes here.
Yeah, because
It's
after,
more like scene setting and
Yes.
setting the vibe.
and like after a month, Jack has still not kind of cracked yet. Everything seems to be like okay for the moment.
Yeah.
Normal a little bit because Wendy brings him his breakfast and she wakes him up. He's like, "What time is it?" 11:30. 11:30.
Yeah.
And
He's been sleeping in, I guess.
yeah, I mean, I can't imagine sleeping till 11:30.
Sleep schedule is
yeah.
If I'm not up by 8, I think I died or something.
I know.
Like,
yeah.
what happened?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, she brings him the breakfast in bed, which was really nice of
Yes.
her, and he's really grateful for it. It seems like, oh, great.
It looks like a great plate of like bacon and eggs
I
too.
know,
It's
man.
like sunny side
It
up.
made me
and-
hungry.
I know. It's like when he starts. First thing he does, he drinks almost all the orange juice before he even digs into the food, and then
Oh.
he takes the bacon first and like breaks up the eggs to like dip it in the yolks.
Oh man, there's like while he's talking to her in this scene, like he's just dipping it in that yolk for like 2 minutes straight, and it's just going
I know.
like the whole time. I'm like, all right, come on, man. The
Yeah.
Foley is a little much.
It is, dude. And that much dipping, that bacon's gonna be real flimsy now.
Still tastes good though.
It does. Yes, of course.
Yeah. But he's saying like, man, I feel like I really like it here. Like I feel like I've been here before,
Yes.
Like there's just something about it.
And if you've seen the movie more than once, you're sitting there watching this conversation. It's like, oh, well, yeah, I love it here. It's great. It's like, oh Jesus, oh God, like the spirits are in him somewhere. They just haven't like revealed themselves fully yet.
Right, yeah. So we got that scene. We get I think our first big wheel tracking shot.
Oh my
here
God, man,
Of
yeah.
Danny riding on his big wheel throughout the hotel, going around in a circular pattern
Right.
through the hallways and stuff. And it's a steady cam low to the ground following the big wheel.
Right.
So it's like we're going right with them. We're right behind them. And these are some awesome shots because like you can't see anything except the hallway in front of him, and you get tons of like turning.
Right.
So it's almost like, going into a room, like opening the door to go to a room that's dark. You turn that corner, you don't know what's going to be there. So like he does these turns and just another long hallway. You're just waiting for something to be there.
Yeah, Danny's big wheel ride, all three of them.
And the sound design too.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's like because it goes from like hardwood floors to carpeted surfaces.
Yeah, so it's like got that like loud like dun, 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 then it goes
Yeah, then it just silences.
dun, 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 dun,
Yeah, yeah.
dun, 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 dun. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
And it looks so fun and cool.
Yeah, dude.
I mean,
this is awesome.
know.
Imagine riding your big wheel in this giant hotel.
When you rode your big wheel on, just blacktop down the street, it was fine. But
Yeah.
the idea of getting to do it on a clean surface for just endless like that.
Doing it inside?
Oh my
Forget
gosh.
about
Yeah,
it, man.
exactly. I
And this
know.
ain't your basement either that you're
That's
driving
right.
in.
You have room to do it.
You could be doing like donuts in the middle of this giant foyer, you
Because
know?
you had that like great handbrake where you do the Tokyo Drift.
Yep. The little Tokyo Drift, dude.
Excellent
stuff,
man.
Yeah, so like it's just really establishing like the sense of the place here.
Right.
And we know something bad's going to happen, and it's just showing us that it's coming.
Yes.
But like I said, nothing really happens. It's just showing us this place.
Right. It's all set up for, I think, the first real incident when there's one sequence of just him typing. Jack is sitting in he's in the Colorado room, we're called.
Yeah.
Where it's this gigantic room with high ceilings, and he's sitting at this oaken table with his typewriter, and you hear him working.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks like he's doing okay. And then at some time later, he's working again, and Wendy comes in, and we see her come in, we hear her coming, and the typing stops because she's like, "Hey, hun, how's it going?"
Yeah.
And this interaction is hard to watch.
Yeah.
And it starts off with her just like, I don't know, she says that she's watched the news, and she says that there's a storm coming, and, the weather's changing, and the snow's going to be, I don't know, 10 feet or whatever. What do you think about that? And he goes, "What do you want me to do about it?"
Yeah.
And she says, "Oh, honey, don't be grouchy." He says, and he goes on this extended abusive rant.
Yeah. He's such a huge asshole here.
Right.
He's saying like, "Hey, when I'm in here working, you can't just come in. You break my concentration, and then
Right.
it takes forever to get back to that spot." And he starts swearing at her and putting her down.
Right.
And he keeps going on and on about this. And he says there's a new rule. When you hear the typing, you don't come in here. And when you don't hear typing, you don't come in here because I'm working. Can you handle that? She's been through this before, right?
Yeah.
So she knows to get out of this situation, she just has to obey him, really. She says yes. And then he says, "Yeah, well, why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?" Dude.
And it's
Come on.
so awful. And
Yeah.
and her, like, Shelley Duvall's reaction to this is, I mean, anyone who's been on the receiving end of this kind of abuse, sometimes, like, if you weren't expecting it, you stand there, and you're just kind of shaking a little bit.
Yeah.
And you want to cry, but you almost can't. You could burst into tears at any moment, but
Yeah.
you don't, because you're just like so devastated that someone's talking to you this way. And Jack Torrance he's a writer, right? He's an author. He's writing a novel.
Mhm.
And you think about, like, regardless of a novel's point of view, they're always a character study where you get to experience someone else's thoughts and feelings. And so Jack is going to write characters and try to portray sensitivity and empathy, yet he talks to his wife with this level of contempt and doesn't feel any guilt about it.
Right. Yeah. He almost feels like he's entitled to behave this way.
Yeah, of course.
From some of the things he says later, it feels like he blames all of his problems
Yeah.
on her. And
He says to her at one point, "Yeah, I've let you fuck up my life, to this
Yeah.
point, and that's not going to happen anymore."
Yep. And it feels like he blames Danny too, but there's a few things he says in the movie that makes you feel like he actually does care about Danny. Even though he is still abusive towards him, he does have some kind of love for him. I get that sense.
Yeah.
But for Wendy, I feel like it's just complete contempt, like you said.
Right.
He would rather her die than talk to her again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's totally, if he ever was in love with her, it's completely gone because no one that you cared about, you would never speak this way to them.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, this scene is, it's the first giant reveal of how this place is affecting him.
Right.
The cabin fever. It's just, he was like this before, right? We can assume that.
Yeah.
And this is just amplifying it. It's just, this environment is making it so much worse.
I know, and there's been like maybe long stretches, like maybe months long stretches where it was more like what we saw before.
Yeah.
And, you know, she would just talk to him and he'd be kind of like that charming smartass that we talked about.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't be like this.
Right.
And even when they were in the bedroom together and she brought him the breakfast, you know, she's like, well, maybe you can take me for a walk later. He goes, well, think I should do some work first, you know?
Yeah.
And
Oh.
it's friendly a little bit, but it's still there's something behind,
Yeah,
there's an
yeah.
edge to it.
Yeah. You can tell what he means to say is, I ain't taking you for a fucking walk.
Exactly. Yes.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now that he's done this, he can start saying that.
Oh, God. Now he has permission.
Yes.
Yeah. He
Right.
gave himself the permission
Yes.
to continue to snowball like this.
Yep.
Yeah, dude. And on that Vivian Kubrick documentary, he does. Jack says that he kind of was in this situation before with a partner where
Yeah,
he wasn't like abusive like this,
Right.
but he had to explain like, hey, when I'm working, like you
Right.
can't interrupt me because then it just totally breaks everything.
He
know?
did it in a human way.
Yeah, he did it like a normal person
Yes,
should.
right. Respectful
Yeah,
and
right.
with
Like,
dignity.
listen, I love you. I want to talk to you too. You know, I
Right.
appreciate it. But
Yeah.
when I'm working, I got to kind of stay in the zone. So if you could please just kind of let me be when I'm doing
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Like, that'd be awesome. And we'll do something after that.
Yep.
Like, yeah. So, Jack Torrance, no.
Right.
So yeah, I think Danny also saw Room 237 at one point here.
He does,
He didn't
yeah.
go in, but he saw the room.
Yes, because there's 3 big wheel rides, and on the first one he saw the room. He stopped in front of it, looked at it, just contemplated, then
Yeah.
rode on.
And he does it. He's like scared when he rides away too, because he
Yes.
takes his backhand and kind of like assists the back wheel to get going
He does.
faster.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's a great little kid move right there. That's like a kid hack, right?
That's right.
Because those wheels just spin out, but if you get more traction on it, you can accelerate faster.
Man, like an adult would be incapable of operating a big wheel.
For real,
You know?
Oh God, can you imagine trying to sit in a big wheel?
My ass
I
on a
would
big
die.
wheel. I know exactly. No way. No way.
I'd break something,
I'd-
and not the big wheel.
I'd break the big wheel and I'd break my ass. Yeah, both things.
Yes, indeed. So the days continue, and we just get like the day of the week on the screen now,
Right.
like between the title cards. Like the last one I think was Tuesday.
Yep.
And then you get like Thursday, and then you get like a shot of them playing in the snow, and then it cuts to Saturday. You know,
Yes,
like
right.
it kind of goes real. Like we said, it jumps around almost, and it doesn't tell you like Saturday the 4th, Monday the 6th. You know,
mean,
it doesn't say
yeah.
that. It's just like this day, and you see the same day popping up over and over.
Because we
too.
have no idea
Yeah.
how much time has passed, and just saying the day of the week gives us no purchase.
Right,
And,
except that like time is moving.
yes. And one of them, I remember it was either a Tuesday or a Thursday. Like what comes after it is, is like one of the famous Stanley Kubrick shots that he uses in most of his films. Is one of the characters. It's the camera focused in on like the bottom of someone's eyes as they're almost like looking down. He did it with Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange. He did it with Vincent
Yeah.
D'Onofrio in Full Metal Jacket. And here it's just Jack Nicholson like staring out the window in that
Yeah.
black turtleneck. And
It's a Thursday.
it's a Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is what he looks like on Thursday. And he's obviously like God only knows what's going through his head.
Yeah.
We've seen him before he went off on Wendy to break tension. He would like play asses up in the Colorado Lounge. He had that tennis ball. That also looked very fun.
Yeah, I would love doing that.
Of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And But that's all past. I mean, he can't do that anymore. Like that
Right.
level of like, gathering himself is gone now because he has filled the whole hotel with his with the ugly side of who he is.
Right, yeah. And I think showing him like throwing the tennis ball and like goofing around, if you want to say,
Yes.
like he's not really getting any work done here.
Right.
I mean, we don't see much progress. I mean, we see him throwing his ball around.
Right.
We see him yelling at his wife. We do hear him typing a couple times. Like, he is doing some typing, but it seems like he's not making much progress on anything while he's here.
Well, when we originally saw him typing, and then we heard him typing again right before he had the scene with Wendy, was he typing "all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy" at that point?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, we can't know for sure, right?
Right.
It's not revealed at all.
No.
But I think I heard that it is. That the entire time he was here, that's the only thing he's been writing.
Right.
Because when it's revealed later, that is all he's been writing. Like, he's written a whole novel of just that.
Yes.
And it's formatted as a novel with paragraphs and, like,
There's blocked
proper
quotes.
sentence structure and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, but it's just like, a whole book of that one sentence.
Right. Right.
Which I heard Kubrick made his secretary do.
God damn it.
I mean, I guess when did they make the movie? It was probably 1979, right? Like,
Yeah.
so, could you just like, were there word processors around then where you could print it out from a computer?
Not that I know of.
I don't think so. It was right around that time when they started. Like,
Yeah.
but I think it was later.
Because in the behind the scenes stuff that I saw, like Stanley Kubrick was using a typewriter himself.
He was probably using a typewriter in the 90s.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. Because Woody Allen was up until 2
Yeah.
years ago.
Yes, he was.
Right.
Have you ever used a typewriter?
Yes.
I haven't.
I had to do it in school, like early in school.
Okay.
And then they got computers when I was in 5th grade.
Yeah, see, I had to take typing, but it was computers.
Okay.
So we didn't have any typewriters in the building.
Oh,
apparently.
okay,
They,
yeah.
they all got thrown out. They were all haunted or something. Had to go.
probably were haunted.
Dude, if I had to haunt something, it'd probably be a typewriter. That's just a cool thing to haunt.
It is, right?
Right?
Especially the one that Jack uses in the movie. It's called an Adler. And there's this great eagle on it.
Oh.
And it changes. Like, they use 2 different models of it. Like, the first one is white, and then when they cut back, it's a different color.
Uh-huh.
And
Oh,
it's
man.
one continuity error that Kubrick made. Or although it might be purposeful, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I would
Yeah.
love to haunt that, though. Like,
Oh.
you could type your messages to people. Yes. And with the eagle, you could, like, caw-caw at people.
You could, too.
That'd be a good haunt. But anyway, we cut to Saturday, and we get a scene of the storm has rolled in now, and
Yeah.
like it's literally like 20 feet of snow has landed on this place,
Yeah, you're stuck.
and the phone lines are down, and we get a scene of Wendy using the ham radio to call the sheriff or whatever to talk to them about
It's
it.
the Forest Service.
Okay, the Forest Service, and I love this conversation. It seems so. I find it really funny to hear Shelley Duvall talk like some like walkie-talkie expert.
So do I. She seems to
And she
really
does a
have
great job at
talent
it, though.
for it. I know. Yeah, she's like, oh yeah, sounds like everything's down. Over.
Yeah, I'm like, okay. I mean, she's really got it.
I know, and she even knows how to like sign off. She's like, okay, well, thanks for your help. Over and out.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yep.
But I always find it so funny.
I find it comforting too. It is funny, like you said. I get a kick out of it, but I just like watching the scene because it's just cool to see Shelley Duvall and the
Yeah.
park ranger too. They have a good back and forth,
Uh-huh.
and it's a pleasant conversation over this radio.
Yeah, I think it's because it sounds almost like just a casual phone conversation.
Yes.
But you have to add in the overs and stuff, so it makes it. I think that's what makes it funny to me.
I know because I like that idea too. I like the official nature of saying over at the end of your sentence to
Yeah.
make sure that the person's heard what you said.
We should adopt that for the podcast.
I mean, can
like
you
anytime my
imagine?
thought is done, I'll say over.
I shouldn't have said that I liked this because now we're going to do it.
You didn't say over, Dave.
Okay, well,
Okay,
so,
see,
yeah.
see, now it didn't work.
Exactly.
We're
That-
just gonna go back to normal.
Yeah, let's pretend that we're not going to do a ham radio.
All right. But we do get another big wheel shot here, and
Yes.
this is where, like I said, you're turning those corners and you're waiting for something to happen, and after he takes a couple turns, we see the twin girls standing
Right.
there, and this is where we get the "Hello, Danny, come play with us forever, forever and ever."
And they say that, and in between them, like getting increasingly closer to his big wheel, Tony reveals, or the Overlook reveals, that the twin girls were slaughtered in this hallway.
Yep.
And the murder weapon is still there. There's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
And and look, I can tell you what it's like for a little kid to see that, because I saw it when I was watching The Shining. And by this, I mean, my dad fell asleep when Danny was in the games room.
Oh,
so
man.
very early
Yeah.
in the film. I'm sitting there, and this is going on. And like like Danny is like trying to cover his eyes, and
Yeah.
and I'm living the same experience in this. I mean,
I can see it.
oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. and this is where I first noticed like how good Danny Lloyd is.
Yeah.
This scene, because he's just perfect, right? Like
Right.
he conveys the fear in the best way possible, and he's frozen up. Like he can't move. He's kind of in shock, stuck there with his expression on his face, and I mean, we feel the way he's feeling because of this.
And to know, too, of course, like we said earlier, that he was able to achieve this without even knowing what kind of movie he was in.
Right.
So they're just telling him, okay, look scared, Danny.
Yeah, in the behind the scenes stuff, you see a lot of Kubrick's like on a megaphone,
Yep.
like he's directing some silent era film, like
I know.
do this now, walk into the frame, and then
Right.
pick up the telephone.
Exactly.
Like that's what he's saying to Danny.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, more scared, run, look back,
Yep.
like that stuff, like literally directing him beat to beat.
Right.
So that's probably a huge part of it.
Yeah. I remember that footage, too, where he's like Danny stops, and he's like, okay, now look at the door. Now do this.
Yeah.
Okay, now run that way. And they even have someone chasing him, so it looks like he's actually like more scared.
Yeah.
Yeah. They really got it out of him.
Could you imagine if he did that to Jack Nicholson or something?
Holy crap, man. Stanley Kubrick, 1927 to 1980.
All right. Yeah, right. He's dead. He's a member of the Overlook Hotel.
Yeah, exactly. You've always been
Permanent
here, Stanley.
resident.
Yep.
Yeah, dude. So we cut to Monday, I think. Just the days.
Yes.
I love the titles of just the days. And Wendy and Danny are watching television in some lobby somewhere, and
They're watching Summer of 42.
Summer of 42.
Yep.
There you go. And he wants to go get his fire engine from his bedroom.
Oh my God.
And she's like, well, Daddy's sleeping. We should leave him alone.
And
Because if we wake him up, he's going to beat our asses.
Jesus, Wendy, you got to just tell him, look, you can't have your fire truck, Danny. I'm very sorry.
Yeah. So she says, fine, go up there. Just because he promises to be quiet. He
Right.
won't wake up Dad. He'll come right back. Okay, go ahead. We'll just both get beat to death by him.
It
Go ahead.
just sucks,
Yeah.
man. I mean, yeah, you either you got to go get it, or you got to tell him that it just can't happen. Because I mean, look, this guy he's a powder keg.
Yeah.
And when Danny goes into the room, he's like, being as quiet as he can. And he looks over, and there's that haunting shot of like Jack Nicholson sitting on the edge of the bed in his bathrobe.
Yep. Just
And-
staring out the window.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows how long he's been doing it?
Mm-hmm.
He's about to crack, and the scene is very uncomfortable because we already saw what he's capable of, the way he talked to Wendy. So now he's with a little kid, and he says, "Come here a minute."
Yeah.
And he grabs the kid, not like
Yeah.
badly, but he just sits him on
lifts
his
him.
lap.
Yeah.
Yes, and he starts like he caresses him and like brings him close like you do with a kid.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You having a good time?"
I was
I know
until
I
right
know,
now.
I know. And I mean, like that's another part of Danny Lloyd's performance is that like he is just dead-eyed, looking at the ground,
Yes,
not
Dad.
blinking. Yes, Dad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, good. I want you to have a good time. Jesus. Yeah.
I'm like so creeped out just from thinking about it.
I know.
My note in all caps right here says creepy as fuck.
And you're also scared because like Danny keeps going, Dad, and yeah. You're thinking, okay,
God.
when's he going to get annoyed?
Yeah.
Because Danny keeps, addressing him.
Yeah.
And he asks him, do you feel sad? He says, oh no, I love it here.
Mm-hmm.
And then he asks him the question, are you going to hurt me and Mom?
Yeah.
And he's asked him, did your mom tell you about, oh for God's
Did
sake.
Mom say that to you?
You know,
No. Yeah. he immediately jumps to what he calls her later, that bitch.
He calls her the old sperm bank upstairs.
Oh, man, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he has no respect for her.
It's absolutely disgusting.
Blames everything on her.
Yes.
She's turning Danny against me.
And when we were talking earlier about, like, you know, whether or not he feels like he does feel like love for his son, that's almost kind of typical of this, like, dynamic too, is that, like, yeah, my child, my boy, my prince.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
I'd do anything for him, but that bitch, you know,
Yeah, dude.
It's, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the scene kind of ends after that. I guess he got his fire truck.
Yeah.
But,
yes.
wow. What a great scene.
I know. Yeah, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, but isn't it just continuous? Like there's no
I
coverage.
think it is. I think it starts with Danny opening and entering the room,
Right.
coming towards the camera, and then we kind of like pan over to Jack Nicholson sitting there, and I guess we do cut to another angle of Jack Nicholson looking at Danny, because then
Yes,
we get
we
the
do.
shot of him in the mirror.
Right. I guess maybe the continuous part starts when Danny actually sits on his lap and
Yeah,
we just
but
cut to it.
when he's on the lap, I think it's an unbroken thing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and I think, like we said, the scene kind of just ends there, and it goes on, right?
Right.
Unbroken. And the movie does a great job of not really giving you any kind of relief. You know, in horror movies, you get like
Yes.
the setup and the relief of the jump scare and things like that. Like
Right.
the whole movie is just kind of building. There's really nothing to scare you. I guess when he sees the twin girls and the haunting stuff there, maybe that's some of it. But like, they just layer it on so thick that when it finally happens, it's like you just get walloped with an axe.
Yeah, that's
pretty
right.
much.
The only thing I disagree with about the categorization of the movie, I know it is a horror film, but that scene between Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson doesn't occur in other horror films.
Right.
This is like a serious psychological drama that has elements of horror.
Yeah. It's like a domestic violence
It
movie.
is,
That's
yes.
what it's about.
Right.
Yeah. And horror can be on so many levels, right?
Of
Like,
course.
horror is in everything if you look at it.
I mean, yeah,
that way. So-
right. Like real life horror that people have to endure.
Right. And I'll tell you what, I'd be afraid of getting beaten by my husband than this hotel full
Yes.
of ghosts. That's the scariest part.
I know.
Is the domestic abuse dynamic here.
I realized also Shelley Duvall was a huge part of my childhood because of
Yeah.
fairy tale theater.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, that excellent children's entertainment show where she gathered A-list actors, everybody, and filmmakers to tell,
Yep.
you know, well-known stories like Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty. Our family rented all those tapes, but The Shining was technically the first movie I saw her in. Because
Yeah.
at age 9, I wasn't watching the films of Robert Altman.
I think I saw Popeye.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Okay.
which
got
was
it.
Robert Altman.
That's true.
Yeah,
you're right.
that's true.
You're right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was definitely Popeye for me.
Okay. Got
and
it.
that was probably the only time I've seen Popeye. Now that I think of it,
I saw it one time. Yeah. Also, I wasn't a big fan.
she's a great olive oil though.
Yeah, she's a perfect
Spitting
olive oil.
image,
Right.
actually.
Yes.
And I mean, we've been praising her performance, and it was so grueling for her.
I know.
And she's on record saying it was the hardest thing she's ever done.
Yeah.
And Jack Nicholson also has said that this is the hardest performance he's ever had to give. And I would say that these are probably the best performances they've given.
Yeah, it's a career high point for both of them.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Even Jack Nicholson said like that was the greatest performance he's ever seen happen.
Wow.
While he worked with her, like out of everything he's ever done, her performance was the greatest bit of acting he's ever seen in his life. And you know who he's acted with?
Everybody.
Yeah. And I would agree with him. Like, it's way up there. She
She's
deserves way more credit. I
Yes.
think nowadays she gets a good amount. She definitely does. But time is weird, Dave.
Yep.
So I think we're still on Saturday, actually. Like,
Yeah, well, let's go to room 237,
yeah,
shall
so
we?
the ball rolls up to Danny while he's playing with his trucks.
Yep.
And this ball just comes out of nowhere. So it rolls up to him and he follows where the ball came from, and room 237 is open with
Yep.
the key in the door. And we don't actually see him go in the room.
Right, we cut away as he enters the room, and we see Jack at his typewriter, and he's fallen asleep. Mm-hmm. And
He starts screaming.
he starts screaming in his sleep with his like cheek against the desk. And as he's screaming, Wendy comes running to help him. she wakes him up, and he falls out of the chair, and he says that he has the most horrible nightmare he's ever had. He says that I killed you and Danny with an axe. I chopped you up into little pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's scary, dude.
Jesus, man. I don't know what the move is here. Do you tell your wife that you had this dream? I mean, it doesn't help her to know that you're thinking about these things.
It doesn't. But I do appreciate his honesty. It gives you a sense that he's still grounded a little bit.
He's not completely gone because
Like,
it scared him.
He's still confiding in her.
Yeah.
Even though we've seen how much he despises her, he still is doing. She is his wife.
Yes.
And he still says that in confidence to her, right? And yeah, she seems okay about it. Like I'm sure she's put off about it.
Sure.
But she doesn't like run away screaming, "Oh my God."
Yeah, her
Yeah.
reaction is actually very good. She's just comforting him.
Yeah.
And Danny walks in, and she's telling him to stay away because she doesn't want him to see his father
Oh,
like this.
man.
And he just keeps, coming toward her. And we can see that his clothes are a little tattered because we're seeing him from the back. And she's like, Danny, hey, now you mind what I say? She comes running over to him. Hang on, Jack. I'll go take care of him.
Yeah.
Danny, what's going on? She comes over. She sees him. He's got his thumb in his mouth. He's like regressed kind of in some ways. He's
Yeah.
not behaving like a 6 or 7 year old would. And he doesn't say anything, but he's got bruises all over his neck. She jumps to the conclusion that Jack
Right.
strangled him.
And the way the shot is framed is the desk with Wendy and Jack are like on one side of it, and then way across the room there's like the big staircase, and then below it there's like the big openings you come into the room from, and Danny comes just slowly walking in from the far side over there.
Right.
And he's so distant from him, and then she runs over to him, and now she's over there with Danny, and Jack's over on the other side, and you just get she's like separated from Jack now with Danny.
Yeah.
She was comforting him, now she's got to comfort Danny.
Yeah.
And Jack is kind of sitting there with that evil look on his face, but he's also kind of confused.
I don't see evil in him. I think he's just like got this look like I don't even know where I am.
Yeah, I guess maybe saying he looks evil is not the right way. It is confusion.
Yeah.
So she's yelling at him, how could you do this to him and stuff? And she grabs the Danny puppet and leaves. And then we cut to him walking through the hallway really pissed off.
Yep.
Like, she's accusing me of this. I didn't do anything. Just yelling and stuff. And he walks into the golden ballroom.
The gold room.
The gold room. And he walks up to the bar. It's completely empty here. And he sits there. And he's looking behind the bar. And he's like, I'd give anything for a drink. I'd give my goddamn soul for a glass of beer. Which is a great line. And then he rubs his face out of just pure stress, right? He rubs his eyes. And he opens them. And it's a fully stocked bar.
Yep.
With a bartender. Yeah. It's just like he's in this weird time dimensional warp place almost. Because he opens his eyes and sees this, and it's like just normal.
Yeah.
Like he expected this.
Yeah, that's the most troubling aspect, I guess, of the scene is that this happens and he doesn't go, "Oh, Jesus Christ," and run out of the room.
Right.
He's just like, "Hey, Lloyd," and then he goes into a good back and forth with his neighborhood barkeep.
Yeah. And I think that's the best part about it because it's really like a ghost story too, right?
Yeah.
Like because the hotel is haunted and we're seeing these ghostly things that have happened. But it's also like, a mental breakdown, right? And by him not reacting to a ghost, a ghost
right.
bartender, oh no. It's just immediately his familiarity with it.
Yep.
I think that's even more scary than being like, oh my God.
When I called it troubling or disturbing, I mean, like, I think it's more just the idea of like, if this happened to me, I mean, I'd be really freaked out before I just said, "Oh, you know what? Give me a bourbon on the rocks."
Yeah. He's completely cracked at this
Right.
point, right? So yeah, he orders the whiskey. You give me a bottle and a glass and some ice, keep filling it.
And, then he starts unburdening himself like you do with the bartender.
Yep. You tell him your troubles.
That's
tell him your
right.
woes.
Yep. And,
Never laid a hand on him.
oh, God.
I love the little son of a bitch.
Oh, my God.
I'd do anything for him. But that bitch. God, man, this scene.
Yeah.
She'll never let me forget what happened. It was 3 years ago.
It still happened, Jack. I mean, have
Yeah.
you apologized? I mean, I'm sure he has said sorry, but has he
man.
actually atoned for
Has
it?
he meant it?
Right.
Probably not.
And has he really changed his behavior? Probably not.
And
Not
Wendy
fully.
even said to the psychologist, like, he even said, like, if he doesn't quit, you can leave me. Mm-hmm. Like, he's giving you permission to leave him.
Sure.
Like, you need that.
Right. Yes. And he's all too typical, I think.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as well. And Lloyd does give him a drink,
Yeah.
and like it hits him, and it like he
Oh,
has a
man.
physical reaction to it.
Like, when that happened, I felt it.
Of course.
I was like when you're like completely dehydrated or something and you just get like a Gatorade, that
right.
feeling. Or I guess if you're an alcoholic and you finally have another taste.
I mean,
yeah.
right,
That's it.
right.
So he's loving this.
Yeah, and Wendy runs into the ballroom and tells him that someone's in room 237. Someone else is in the hotel, and that's who did this to Danny. So it's one of my favorite Jack Nicholson reactions. He looks at her after this interaction with Lloyd, this 10 minutes of conversation with an invisible bartender, and he goes, "Are you out of your fucking mind?"
It's so good. Yes, it is. And she's like, "No, I'm telling you the truth.
Right, yes.
Danny told me all this.
A crazy lady.
There's a crazy lady." And he goes, "What room?"
Yep.
And then Jack goes to the room. I don't know why Wendy doesn't go with him.
That's a good question.
Which I was
yes.
going to bring up in the next scene. But
Okay.
she should go with him.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Right. So he goes when he goes in the room, the carpet has penises on it.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Oh yeah. Just look again next time you see it.
Okay.
It's like the pattern is definitely like all these phalluses all over the place.
Okay. Cool.
Nice.
I mean, I guess I didn't mean it like to be a joke, but
Right.
yeah, that is kind of funny the
No,
way I said that. Okay, yeah,
and it's a good pattern.
that's cool. I mean,
Right.
that's cool for the film.
Yeah, it
right?
is. Right.
Yeah.
But he goes into the bathroom, and that 70s olive drab paint on the walls.
Uh-huh.
There's a really attractive naked woman in the bathtub.
Mm-hmm.
And Jack sees her, and she, pulls the curtain back, and she starts to get out of the tub and come toward him, and he is loving it. He's like, "Oh my God, here
Just
we
a
go!"
big smile on his
Yes.
face.
And she comes over, and she invites him to embrace her, and they do. And as they start making out, he looks in the mirror, and he sees that she has turned into this hideous crone who's like putrefied.
Yeah.
And
Flesh peeling off her body.
yes.
Yeah.
And man, this is another time when I was my first viewing, where I was just, I mean, like, I can't tell you the level of terror at hearing just, I mean, and it goes on for 30 seconds.
As Jack backs away in terror.
Oh my, like, he's just like, he's grossed out. He's also like fearful.
Yeah.
And this man, props to this lady. This actress as the old lady, because
Yeah.
she's fully nude, full frontal. Like, yeah, it's
I mean,
quite a performance.
Both of the ladies, their names here, the young woman is Lily Beldam, and the old woman is Billy Gibson.
Okay.
I read that neither of them were in a movie before this or after this.
I looked on IMDb
Which is
as well.
interesting.
They have one credit each.
Yeah, pretty interesting.
I know.
And a bait and switch, right?
Yeah.
Into a horrifying thing.
Right.
You're making out with, it's like a siren, right? Like
Of course.
you're this attractive woman has pulled you in under her spell, and then it's a grotesque monster.
Yes.
Right? That's what it is.
You're right. Right.
So, yeah, you got, dude, I wish I could see your face during this whole experience.
yes, there was a lot to process for a 10-year-old. Yeah.
Did you go hide at one point?
Yes.
I think I remember that.
It was after the after the furry and the tuxedo gentleman.
Okay, all right. So near the end.
Yeah, I made it that far, and yes, I ran into my parents' room and hid behind
You
their
were
bed.
this close, Dave. You almost watched the whole movie.
I know, and I don't know, like like whatever came after that wouldn't have made it worse, but that was it for me.
Yeah.
I'd had it.
Ah,
Yeah.
man. That's my favorite thing, Dave. I love this.
Right.
But after this, we cut to Scatman Crothers in his bedroom in Miami, surrounded by sexy portraits of naked ladies. And he gets a feeling.
Oh man.
He starts to feel the shine.
Yes. Because Danny is summoning him. And there's the real chilling shot of like the close up on Danny Lloyd as he like his head shakes back and forth and he's drooling a little bit.
Yeah.
And like the way they, I guess the way they visualize it is you just hear this like ringing noise, and like Scatman Crothers is like looking up and he's hearing this and he knows what's happening. And he's wearing those really cool tailored pajamas too. Really, he's got
This guy is fly.
yeah,
man.
he is. This stylish life. But he decides to call the Overlook because, that's to check on things.
Yeah.
And he can't get through because the phone lines are down. So he calls the Forest Service and asks them to check in on the Torrances. And they says, okay, just call us 20 minutes later. So they check in on him. No one's near the radio.
Yeah.
And they give up.
Right. So he decides, I got to go.
Yep.
We cut to him on a plane, and he's going up there.
Right.
And while he's doing that, we cut back to Jack has returned from his experience in room 237.
Yes.
And he enters their bedroom where Wendy is. She's terrified. And Jack goes to tell her that he saw nothing. There was nothing there. I didn't find anyone.
Part of an abusive relationship is, the gaslighting,
Yep.
and him telling her that there was nothing in there and making her think that she's crazy,
Yep.
and then accusing Danny of having done it himself.
Yeah. That's the worst part.
Right.
And, like, I think it's a bad move for many reasons, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's just the wrong thing to do to people you love. But also, if he's trying to, like, hide things and not be the horrible monster that she thinks he is, trying to place the blame back onto Danny was kind of a very thin veil to place the blame off of you, like
Yeah.
to remove it from himself.
Yeah.
I think it just makes him look even more guilty in a way.
Right.
So he's not the best with his words, that's for sure.
Yes.
And, really at this point, he probably doesn't even care. He's just
Right.
trying to think of a way to get out of this situation.
And in this moment, too, when he's saying all this, he's being as sensitive as Jack Torrance can be.
Yeah.
Her reaction is, well, we need to go take him somewhere to get him checked out.
Yeah.
And that's when he turns.
Oh,
He says,
man.
that is so fucking typical of you. And he starts to go on and on about, have you thought about my future and what would happen to me if I didn't do this?
Yeah.
Maybe I could go, I could really write my own ticket down in Boulder. I could work at a car wash and shovel out driveways.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is when he says, I let you fuck up my life
Yep.
this far, but I'm not going to let you keep doing it or something like that.
Right.
Oh,
And
man.
Shelley Duvall, throughout this scene, is looking up at him just like in terror and also disbelief. It's the perfect reaction to someone going through something like this.
Yeah. And he storms out of the room.
Yep.
And he goes back down to the bar. He's making a mess now as he walks around. He's just
Right.
throwing like all the stuff on the ground, knocking like vases over and
Yep.
cups and everything. And this time when he enters the ballroom, it's a big 1920 gala
Yep.
is happening. Well-dressed, to-dos from the 1920s.
That's right. There's
Yeah.
200 people in here, and it's all flappers, and it's
Yeah.
1921, and he goes to the bar, and Lloyd, what'll it be, sir? Hair of the dog that bit me, Lloyd. And and he's
man.
told at one point, he gets out his money. He's like, "Oh, no charge to you, Mr. Torrance.
Yeah.
Your money's no good here." And he then has to like kind of be forceful with him. He's like, "It
Yeah.
doesn't concern you, Mr. Torrance."
I like it. He's like, well, I'm the kind of man who likes to know who's buying my drinks. And then he says, well, it doesn't concern you. And it gets him to stop questioning.
Whatever you say, Lloyd.
He drinks up.
Yep.
And then he walks around the room and he gets some drink spilled on him.
Advocat.
Advocat, which I have no clue what that is.
I looked it up.
Okay.
It's like essentially like eggnog liqueur.
Oh, God. So the purest ass you could drink.
I knew you, a connoisseur of scotch and other spirits, would react badly to it.
Really nasty.
Yes.
So he gets it on his clothing.
Uh-huh.
And the butler guy who's carrying it around on a platform,
Yep.
on a platter, spills it on him and spills some on himself. And he's like talking to him in that fancy, servant voice.
Of course.
Like, well, sir, let's go to the bathroom. We'll clean you up. And
Get some water on it.
Yeah. he's like, all right, Jeeves, let's go.
All right, Jeevesy, old boy.
I love when he like pats him on the back
Uh-huh.
and then he gets some on his back.
And it's still there later on?
Yes.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. And
Looks like you got some on yourself there.
yeah, I know. And then he puts more on him.
I know.
mean, it's just, oh. So they go into this haunted bathroom.
This looks haunted.
It does. I know. I mean, like, there is nothing inviting about this. Like,
It's like
pristine.
It's like modern, like the 1970s modern design,
Yes.
right? Sharp edges and like bright colors and contrast.
Right.
But it's the scariest murder bathroom you've ever
I
seen.
mean, God, who would have a, like, panic button red bathroom?
yeah, yeah.
Just, wow.
And I doubt this is what the bathrooms really look like in the hotel, right? It's obviously a manifestation of his
Sure.
just shattered mind.
Right.
It's got to be.
Right. But the way that the urinals are arranged over on the sides, and it almost like it looks like a backgammon set. Like the
It totally does. Yeah.
oh man.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, they're in this bathroom now.
They are, yes. It's as the butler starts to the waiter starts cleaning the advocat off of Jack's clothing.
Yes.
They strike up a conversation. It turns out the man's name is Delbert Grady.
Yes.
And in the interview with Ullman earlier in the movie, we forgot to mention that like the last thing Ullman said to Jack was that we had to disclose something.
Yeah.
That there was a previous caretaker named Grady. He had he chopped up his wife and kids with an axe, and then he killed himself.
2 daughters.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So Jack hears the name Grady, and he gets suspicious. and this is another.
Don't I know you?
Yeah.
Like, aren't you the caretaker?
Are you a family man, Mr. Grady?
Yeah. I'm sorry. You are the caretaker. You've always been the caretaker. This is what he's saying to Jack Torrance.
I should know, sir. I've always been here.
And this scene is just so strange, right? It's otherworldly.
Philip Stone as Delbert Grady.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a chilling performance. I've seen this guy in a couple of other movies. He played Alex's dad in Clockwork Orange, so
Yeah.
he's worked with Kubrick before, and he was in Oh Lucky Man as well.
Oh, yeah? Do you know who he was?
Yeah,
You remember?
he was like an MI6 agent.
Okay.
And he was interrogating Mick at one point.
Uh-huh.
And I remember seeing him just going, okay, this dude, he's not always evil, but there's always the potential for evil whenever
Yeah.
you see him.
Yeah.
Because he's always just like, he's got that perfect bald head and a real granite jaw. And
Yeah.
the way he holds himself, this guy's trouble.
Yeah, and his head's like a real, like elongated
It is.
head.
Yes. Like he was born to have that receding hairline. Like
Oh,
it,
yeah.
It really
You
fits
can't
him.
do anything about it.
Right.
But yeah, they're having this real back and forth here,
Uh-huh.
and about wait, no, you're the ghost murderer. No, wait, you're the ghost murderer.
I know. I mean, it's essentially Jack is hallucinating, and he's talking himself into killing his wife and child.
Yeah,
And this other guy, Delbert Grady, is telling him it's okay. And there's one point where he telling Jack, your son has a very great talent. and then he tells Jack that his wife and his daughters, they didn't like the Overlook.
Mm-hmm.
So I corrected them.
Yep. And your wife and son may need to be corrected.
And the way he says it too, perhaps they need a good talking to. Perhaps a bit more.
Oh man. Yeah. It takes its time too, right?
Yeah.
The scene goes on for a while because all these sentences they say to each other, they have a pretty long pause between responses to each other.
Right.
Like it's probably like 5 to 10 seconds between responses. Not like a normal conversation. And Jack Nicholson is just buying in. He looks like he's cracked up in this scene.
I mean, Yeah, and it's one of Stephen King's, I know, complaints really about the performance in general, is that he always felt that Jack Nicholson looked like he was completely on edge even before he cracked.
Yeah.
And obviously he had other issues with the movie too, which we'll get into at some point, I'm sure. But this part right here where he is cracked, like that expression, that performance is totally justified, because at this point we see he's talking to a ghost.
Yeah. In a ghost bathroom.
Exactly. So it calls
doesn't
for
exist.
It. Yes, that's right. Yes. So yeah, and this is in a movie full of great scenes. This is one of my absolute favorites. I can watch this scene over and over, even though as hateful as it is,
yeah,
and the ideas that it's putting forth, because it gets racist too at some point.
Oh my gosh, yes.
He says that, like, did you know your son is attempting to bring an outside party into the situation, and he says the N-word.
Yeah,
and then Jack Nicholson says it back to him, and then Delbert Grady says it again.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, guys,
come on.
You didn't have to have 3 of those.
You didn't need one.
No, you
honestly.
Didn't. Right. Man.
Oh, dude. But yeah, the whole scene is quite something else.
Right.
It really, I mean, because when he steps into the ballroom itself, like, and the people are there.
Yeah.
It just, now he's just in a total other plane of existence.
Yes,
right? Like,
and when he walks into the ballroom, like, he's not surprised. The guy
right.
at the door says, "Oh, good evening, Mr. Torrance," and he just goes, "Ah, good evening."
Yeah, and then we cut to Wendy. She's in the bedroom, kind of pacing back and forth, and Danny is there. And has he turned into Tony yet? Like, fully? I can't remember.
I think he turns into Tony right about here.
Yeah, because he's he like just keeps saying the word red rum over and over and screaming like he's sleeping or something. And says red rum, red rum, red rum like a million times. And she wakes him up and she's like, Danny, Danny. And he's like, Danny's gone away, Mrs. Torrance.
Jesus.
With his fucking finger.
Yes.
God.
I know.
Tony is there permanently, I guess. Call the psychologist.
I know.
Right now.
Right. But yeah, and Halloran is en route to the hotel.
Yes.
And he has to call Tony Burton when he gets to Stapleton Airport.
Yeah, yep.
He's trying to get a snowcat because he's going to go up
Yeah.
he's going to go up the mountain, and he flew from Miami to Denver, and it's going to take 5 hours to get from Denver to where Tony Burton is.
Yeah.
And then he's going to take a snowcat, to the Overlook.
Which will take another eternity.
Oh my God, I can't even imagine. So, but he's making the journey, and like Grady had already told Jack, that this was going on, and this is when I think Wendy discovers the all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy stuff.
Yeah, she goes down to like confront him, I guess, because she tells Danny like, hey, I need to talk to Daddy. You stay here and watch your cartoons.
Right.
And this little kid is still Tony while he's sitting here.
Right.
He's just catatonic, right?
Right.
So she grabs the baseball bat and she holds it right in the middle like an amateur. And
yeah, she chokes up.
Dude, I love how she holds this bat.
Right.
Like, it just shows how, I don't know, like, how unaware she is of the effectiveness of what she's doing.
Of course,
Yeah.
because she's not Mike Schmidt. She doesn't know how to swing that bat.
Yeah. Her batting average is 0.
That's right. Yes.
So she goes downstairs and he's not in the typing room where she expected him to be. I guess she thought he'd be there. Looking for him, and she walks over to the desk. So she goes there and she finds the paper on his desk. Like we said earlier, an entire novel is written with all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And she finds it and is like just kind of horrified by seeing this, because what does this mean?
Right.
Like, what has he been doing? No sane man would do anything like this.
It's hundreds of pages just like fully typed out. And yeah, that's been his work for all this time. He's just been writing that phrase.
Yep.
And yeah, it's like 2 novels. It's a pretty huge stack of paper there.
Yeah, it's giant.
Right.
And she's just like flipping through them. It's endless.
Right.
And as she's doing that, Jack comes up behind her. Like, he doesn't jump scare her or anything.
No.
Like, the camera actually changes to be like Jack's POV almost. And
Right.
we emerge from the shadows with him. And he like comes closer to her and is like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing down here?
Yes, and
Yeah.
I know.
Yep. She says they have to talk.
Right. And you know, like he's not even trying anymore. He's not even.
No.
There's no facade. He is going to kill her.
Yep.
And he tells her that.
he keeps walking towards her as she backs away.
Right.
So like he won't stop like inching closer and closer.
Yep.
As she's trying to talk to him and she's backing away and she ultimately like starts going up the staircase that's in the room and he keeps like antagonizing her, like just pushing her, being more crueler and crueler as he gets closer to her. And eventually like he really snaps on her cuz he keeps saying like kind of the stuff he said earlier, right? Like, have you even thought about my responsibilities to this place? And have you ever thought about me or what I have to do?
The belittling nature of those comments. I mean, like, it's something you'd say to someone who you had no respect for and who you think you've infantilized her on top of everything else. Do you know what a contract is, Wendy? That kind of stuff. It's like, yes, he's fully aware of what would happen. But, you know, I'm trapped in here with you. And our son is obviously troubled.
Yep.
So, and now you're trying to kill me?
Ugh. And she's got the bat. She's kind of like swinging it at him, like, just like, stay away. Like, not a real swing or anything. And he's like, tries to like grab it a couple times. And it like makes him almost like, it pushes him over the edge. Like, he becomes like kooky almost here.
I know.
She's like, she says, don't hurt me or something. And he says, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just going to bash your brain in.
Just gonna bash him right the fuck in.
Yeah, it's amazing because it's a tracking shot up the stairs behind her, like from her POV as Jack Nicholson is approaching us.
Right, I know.
It's awesome, and it's kind of over the shoulder, so it almost looks like we're swinging the bat at him. It's not like an exact POV shot because she's like in the frame a little still, but that's what it's like. He's coming for you,
and he reaches in too much and she gets him on the right hand with the bat with one of the swings and he's kind of stunned by it.
Yeah.
And then she just hits him in the head.
And just going back 1 second, like when he says, I'm just going to bash your brains in or whatever. Like I love, he also does like an interjection. He's like, Wendy, darling.
Love of my life.
Oh God, I love it. Right before he says he's going to kill her. It's great.
Yeah. It's just these two, man. I mean, the two powerhouse actors.
Yeah, and this is one of those scenes that apparently took like 127 takes, right?
And that's the most, like, of all the perfectionism I hear from Stanley Kubrick, stuff like this. I'm just like, Stanley, now you know how fraught with emotion this scene is and how much it takes for an actor to get to a place to have this conversation on camera. So be giving of actors. Do you like actors? It doesn't sound like you do.
It doesn't, I don't think so.
Right.
And this is another like conflating thing, right? Like I read that I think it was Garrett Brown, the camera operator.
Okay.
He's the guy who invented the Steadicam, actually.
Oh yeah.
He was operating the camera. He said it wasn't 127. It was only like 35 or 45. Which, for Christ's sake,
that's 35 or 45 more than it should have been.
I know, right?
I mean, it's Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson, two great actors who were very experienced, who knew what they were doing. And I mean, I've seen like the interview with Shelley Duvall on that Vivian Kubrick documentary where she talks about how like, oh, she's being way more giving with Stanley Kubrick than he would have been. He's like, oh yeah, he was. It was hard sometimes, and he was tough on me, but like, you know, it took me to the next level, and I got a lot out of it. You know? And I'm sure she actually did feel that way about
Apparently
it.
that's true. Like,
Yes.
she really did feel that way, but doesn't mean she didn't I mean, she never wanted to work with him again, ever.
Yeah, exactly.
And she's on the record like, I'm never doing that again.
Yes.
I do understand what he was doing, and I think it did elevate me.
Yeah.
But fuck that shit.
I know, because no one deserves that kind of treatment.
Yeah.
And she even also said stuff about how, like, you know, well, whenever someone is saying those kinds of things to you or treating you that way, of course you hate them in the moment. But then, you know, once you realize, you know, later on or whatever, and I'm like, okay, yeah, so she's totally right about that. I mean, there have been plenty of times where someone has, like, maybe I respected them afterward, even though they treated me badly. But I didn't realize, though, in that moment that I shouldn't have been treated badly to begin with.
Yeah.
They could have like taught me a lesson without making me feel like I was not a person.
Right. You don't have to beat a horse to break it, right?
Yes.
Like, you can be kind.
Right.
You can work together.
I've seen other people justify his behavior, you know, with all kinds of, and himself too, and like, oh, he's just because he's a huge intellectual. You know, he's got an IQ of over 200, and it's just like people like that. They just, you have to give them a break because they don't know how to interact with. Yes, they do. Yes, they goddamn do. And we don't all have to, like, you know, bend the knee just because of this incredibly sharp, intelligent man is here.
Yeah. And he knows what he's doing.
Of course he does.
He knows what he's doing.
Yes.
And he would abuse her in ways like saying, like, you're wasting everyone's time.
I know.
Like, you're being horrible. Like, that was awful. Like,
Right.
He was being really cruel about it.
There's footage of him
Yeah.
saying this stuff.
Exactly. Not just like, here's some pointers. This is what I'm looking for.
Right.
Try this.
It
You know?
looks fake, Shelley.
I
It
feel
looks
like
fake.
I want to know, like, what was wrong with those 126 takes?
I can't even imagine. Right. It's
What was wrong? It's not like you're shooting a oneer here.
I know.
Where you got to get the 12 minutes right.
Right.
You're cutting. Like, you don't need. Oh my God, dude.
I know.
Yes, he's a visionary. He's a great filmmaker.
He is.
But I'll tell you what, I think his movies would have been just as good with half the takes, maybe even 95% less takes.
Because if he did 95 takes, did he use take 95?
Right.
Because that's the only way to justify
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, man.
All right. Well, so he did get walloped on the head. And he
Right.
fell down the steps.
Right.
So you get a nice stunt double doing some fall down
Oh,
the
man,
stairs.
yeah, that's a
It
really
was a real fall.
tough bump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we cut to him kind of waking up, being dragged by his boots across the floor.
And like Shelley Duvall is really dragging Jack Nicholson by the hiking boot across this floor.
I mean, she's like 110 pounds,
she's
right?
a frail, like, I mean, yeah, she's a small lady.
Like, I'm surprised this bat even hurt him. Like, the way she was holding it, and
I know.
I mean, I don't want to be mean, but she doesn't look very strong, right?
No,
She looks like quite a weak woman.
Shelley Duvall is many things, but athletic isn't one of them.
Athletic and powerful is not how I would describe her.
Yes, right.
But yeah, she drags him into this, pantry
Right.
where all the canned goods are stored. And earlier in the movie, she opens that giant thing of mixed fruit.
Oh my God.
You remember that? It made me want to
Yes.
vomit.
I know, when she poured it into the big bowl and it was like,
It's just slopping
Yes.
in. I hate that. First off, I hate that canned mixed fruit anyway. It tastes like freaking steel.
I know, right?
But just to see like 100 pounds of like lunch lady food,
I know.
I'm like, no, I don't want it.
You know, the gross thing is, I ate many cans of peaches and heavy syrup.
Oh, me too.
You know?
Yeah.
It's so gross,
Me
though.
too.
You think about it now, yeah, you wouldn't touch it.
Oh, he's stuck in this closet. He comes to as she gets out the room and locks the door. So now he's locked in this room.
Yep.
For a long time.
Right.
She locks him in, and she's hysterical, like in this moment too. And even while he's locked in there, she's sitting outside the room. She's probably purely exhausted physically and emotionally from all this stuff. And he starts trying to sweet talk her back in to his side, let him out. I promise I'll forget the whole thing.
I'll forget the whole goddamn thing.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay,
believe
that's
that, Jack.
convincing.
Right, yes. And then he goes into like, oh, Wendy, I think you hurt my head real bad.
And you can see on Jack Nicholson's face during this scene how the character, his mind switches to like, well, I'm going to try this tactic.
Yep.
Like you can just see it happening,
Right.
which is awesome. And it's shot from below, like the camera's at his feet as
Yeah.
he's leaning towards this door.
Very
And he's-
strange shot.
He's kind of looking down, but his eyes are up, like
Yep.
looking forward.
Yep.
And it's quite a shot. And on those behind the scenes, you can see Kubrick down there
I
with
know.
like the eye thing, like measuring it, like, oh, this will be good.
Yep.
You know? But she doesn't buy it.
Right.
She's got that giant knife in her hand now too.
And he tells her, once he realizes she's not going to open the door, that's when he just, reveals that he has sabotaged the snowcat and he destroyed the radio.
Yeah, she says she's gonna go with Danny to the cat or whatever and get out of town. And he's like, "Wendy, you got a big surprise coming to you."
Yep, right.
Like he's totally crazy.
Oh,
dude.
yeah, he's cracked.
And he's like, we cut to his camera, that camera angle up, and he's like going just nuts, and his face is all red, and he might as well be drooling
Yeah.
on the camera and stuff too. Mm-hmm. It's awesome stuff.
Yes.
We cut to I love this shot. We cut to like 4 p.m. and Jack's kind of just laying on the ground with like opened up boxes of Oreos and stuff
Yeah,
around
he's
him.
been eating like dry goods.
But he comes to and he hears Grady's voice from the other side of the door talking to him.
Yes.
Kind of saying like, well, you kind of failed at this,
Yes.
We thought you could handle this, but it's obvious you cannot.
Some of my associates don't think you have the belly for it, he
Yes.
says. Oh, man.
I love that language.
Yeah.
The belly for it. It's that like proper old language.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yeah, and, Jack has to assure Mr. Grady that, you let me out of here, I will definitely get this job
I give
done.
you my word
Mhm.
that I can handle this.
Right.
And then you hear the door unlock. So the ghost has unlocked the door.
Yeah. They let
Or
Jack
the,
out.
Or the hotel has. Or
Right.
whatever the haunting thing here is.
Right.
Has let him out.
Yeah. And first he has to take care of Halloran.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And-
Scatman has arrived.
Right. Of all the differences between the novel and the movie, my biggest complaint with Kubrick's adaptation is what he did with Halloran.
I've heard it's big difference.
Yes, very. I mean, like in the book, Dick Halloran helps Wendy and Danny escape,
Mm-hmm.
and to have him get murdered in cold blood after he got there via Snowcat is, I think, it's a problem with the movie.
Okay.
And I don't know what the point of having him even come back was if as soon as he walks in the door he gets murdered.
Yeah. And it's the only murder in the movie, really.
Yeah,
We don't see anyone die. We see like the dead girls, but that's like a ghostly flashback.
right.
Right.
This is the only kill that I can think of.
Yeah. I kind of like it in the movie. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay.
I like it. I guess because it is such a shock in the movie.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like it is a very shocking scene because of the way it's set up.
Right.
He walks into the hotel and he keeps walking through and he's saying, "Hello? Anybody here?"
Mm-hmm.
And he says it like 20 times, and it's mostly an unbroken shot of him walking through this long hallway at the entrance of the hotel with
Yes.
these pillars, and he finally gets like near the end almost, and then suddenly Jack jumps out with the axe and strikes him right in the chest. It's just totally unexpected.
And I love the way he emerges. He goes, "Ah!"
Oh,
and swings that axe, and the way it gets him like right in the breastbone,
yeah.
and it's
Oof.
like, so he's not going to die in that moment. He's got to feel that,
Oh,
and you got to get the axe out of there and then bring it down a couple more times to
Yeah.
get the killing blow.
yeah. So he's laying there, he's dead, but I do like how shocking it is. I have never read the book, so I
Okay.
don't know anything different. So
Well, and obviously I saw the movie before I read the book, but like when that was a big surprise for me when I read the book, because I thought when Dick Halloran enters the hotel, he's going to
Mm-hmm.
get killed. Oh my God, he's still alive and he's still doing all this other stuff. And yeah, it was just, I feel like there could have been something else done. Maybe he could have been killed later on.
I will say I do feel like like yes, it happened way too quick,
Yes.
right? Like he kind of comes back for no reason at all,
Right.
Like,
Right.
except to shock the audience,
Yes.
because we expect something's going to happen. Like maybe he'll help them, maybe he will die, but not immediately. Like Danny and Wendy don't even know he's there.
Danny might know eventually, like he might have some kind of like psychic connection, and now he knows that. Oh well, I guess he does know because that's the whole thing of Red Rum,
Right, because the scene is when Jack actually comes to the bedroom where Wendy and Danny are.
Right.
And Wendy's sleeping, and that giant knife is next to the bed. This thing's like 2 feet long. At least.
It's a big bread sword.
Yeah. Sword is the right way to.
Yes.
So it's sitting there, and Danny's kind of pacing around the room saying "Red Rum,"
Right.
Red Rum, and he gets the lipstick and he draws Red Rum on the door, like, and it's got like a backwards R and all
Yeah.
kinds of creepy little kid stuff, right? And
Yes.
Wendy wakes up whenever he starts screaming "Red Rum, Red Rum." I think I read he says it like 45 times in this scene.
And you feel all 45
Yes,
of them. You know, you're tired of hearing Red Rum by the time he's done.
At least the inflection changes throughout the scene.
It does, yeah. And they even like loop it a little bit because you can tell it's not actually Danny Lloyd saying it when he turns
Yeah.
his back and he's just like Red Rum, Red Rum. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh God, they're just using soundtrack.
Yeah, it's
now.
like some Exorcist dubbing.
Yes.
Yes.
Mercedes McCambridge
And
starts
he's-
talking.
Yes. Yes. And he's holding that bread knife too. Sword, excuse me.
Yes.
And he's holding it the wrong way.
I know.
Have you noticed?
Yes,
He's got
he
it
is.
backwards,
Yes.
which really bothers me. I think that's what's the scariest thing about this scene.
Right.
I'm like, he's holding that knife wrong. He's gonna get hurt.
Oh my God. I know. And she eventually, like, starts to she comes to, and she looks in the mirror and sees red rum means it's murder spelled
Yes.
backwards.
Right, and it's one of those big, like, if the camera, like, zooms in, like,
Yep.
murder.
Right,
It's like,
right.
Oh, no. Well, I do remember, though, when I first saw it and, like, realized, oh, it's murder backwards. I didn't know. I didn't put two and two together.
Yeah, you wouldn't have. How would you have suspected that?
Well, because you don't really see it spelled until
Yeah.
that moment.
Right.
You just hear red rum, and you're like, oh, well, red rum, what does that mean?
Because you can talk yourself into that red rum. He's just talking about blood because he'd seen the blood earlier.
Yeah.
and he named. That's his word for blood is red rum.
Right. And, I mean, you said you read the book after seeing the film, so
Yes.
it's not like you don't have an experience of reading it and seeing, like, well, that's murder backwards,
No.
right? Like, I'm sure many people did if they had read the book first.
Of course.
I'm sure they were like, well, that's murder.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
But, yeah, it wakes up Wendy, and this is where Jack comes to the door, and he wants to get in.
She's locked it, and he's getting in by using the axe to get through the door.
Yeah.
And it's very scary because, like, Wendy, she's an abused woman, and she's got her kid with her, and her bastard of a husband is using an axe to get into where she's at.
Yep.
And so she goes to the bathroom and, like, she gets the window open, and she's able to get Danny out the window, and he slides down the snowdrift.
Yep.
But she can't get out. She's too big. And Jack finally gets into the bathroom where she is because he got into the caretaker's
man.
area, but he now has to, like, take the axe to the bathroom door. And when he gets through, the iconic shot of him, his
Yeah.
face through the slat, and he says, "Here's Johnny."
Yeah.
And she slashes his hand with the bread sword. And there needs to be more of it, obviously, but
Right,
like
yeah.
it's still a good defense.
He needs to get green roomed right here. That's what needs to
right.
happen, dude.
That's a fact, dude.
Um,
Yes.
But no, he just gets a little cut on his hand.
Right.
And I love the shot of him chopping the door, actually.
Yeah.
Because he does this real big, like, fireman's chop with
Yeah.
it to bust it open. And the camera pans, like, back with the axe and then forward with the axe real fast.
Right.
And it's just a really jarring movement of you going with that axe. You really feel the force and impact of it.
Yeah, and Jack Nicholson, I read, had been a firefighter before he was an actor, so he's like an expert with an axe.
I read they had a fake door.
Yeah.
And it was too frail. He,
Yes.
like, destroyed it immediately.
Exactly, yes. Right, which is awesome. So, like, Jack Nicholson knew how to swing an axe, so they had to build a real door, two real doors.
Imagine you have a door, and then you're like, you know what? We need a fake door.
Right.
So, prop department, get on the fake door. They make a fake door. It's too fake.
Yes.
We need a strong door. Make a strong door. What kind of, like, extra work are you making these people do?
Yeah, probably all.
I mean, I
probably an
guess
all-nighter.
they're getting work, so that's good.
Sure, but someone probably had to stay up all night making that new door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is quite a scary scene because
Right.
we know she's been abused before and she's being abused during this movie and now,
Yeah.
but of course it's life-threatening right now.
Right.
So it is just utterly terrifying. And Shelley Duvall just cowering in the corner with her knife, like the face just totally just drooped down in fear.
Yes.
The mouth open, just screaming. It is her expression. It really gives the terror.
Oh, of course, right.
She's genuinely fearing for her life here.
Yes, it's excellent, and she really makes it work. And now Danny is outside, and when Jack has to go away to figure out what to do next, that's when Wendy gets out, and she's now in the hotel, going through the hallways and everything, and she's trying to figure out what to do next. But she's going from room to room, and like other ghosts are revealing themselves.
Yeah.
She also sees the blood from the elevators. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of my favorite Shelley Duvall shots in the movie where her reaction to the blood, I've got a still of it in my phone.
Uh-huh.
Because it's just like, when you pause it, don't look at it for too long because it's kind of scary.
Okay.
It's real.
Yeah.
I almost can't look at it because it's like Shelley Duvall making this face that is like, well, you don't want to see that face on a human being.
Yeah. We'll have to share it on
Yes,
Instagram.
we will.
Everybody, check it out. Follow us on Instagram for that horrifying
Yes,
picture.
exactly. Get ready.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and like this is the only time she sees the ghosts, right?
Right.
Like she sees I think it's Grady, the one guy. Is
It's
it Grady?
It's not Grady.
Okay.
It's just some guy who looks like him.
Okay. And he's got like his head cut open,
Yeah.
kind of. He's like, excellent party.
Great party, eh? Yeah. And I remember that was on the back of the box.
Is it?
Yeah.
And then she sees the bear filleting that man in the
Yeah.
tuxedo.
And it's still that those two gentlemen are still being talked about, all these years later. And like, I did they have that kink in the 1920s? I don't know.
Probably.
I mean, yeah.
I know. I haven't read the novel, but I know that in the novel there was a scene like that. Like
Yeah.
I think a man in a dog costume,
Right.
not a bear, was doing that to someone.
I've gone back and forth on
know.
whether this is a bear or a dog, just in the movie.
That
'cause
could be a dog.
Yeah, I mean, because I love the butt flap is
But
down.
what's the? Yeah, right. Yeah, his cheeks are out.
Yeah, his-
Yeah, because he's not just giving, right?
No, exactly.
So-
He's ready for action.
Yeah. So, but I don't really understand the point of that shot either. Just to maybe show like the strange scariness of the ghostly mansion.
I know,
don't
because it's really just two people minding their own business.
Yeah, and she barges in on him.
Right. And and they don't do anything to. They just look at her and
Yeah, it's just something to unsettle the audience.
Right,
Right.
right. It's one of the most iconic shots in the movie, and it's hilarious to talk about.
And it's almost meaningless.
I know, because it other than just Wendy reacts to it like, oh my God, there's. I mean, I think anytime you encounter spirits in a haunted hotel, you thought you were alone, and you see a filleted man. Oh God! Oh shit! What's happening?
Yeah. There's a furry party going on
Yeah,
here. You
right.
weren't invited.
Right.
So,
Yes. I wasn't invited. That's right.
So, yeah, she just sees all that stuff, and she runs outside, and Danny has been chased outside by
Right.
Jack. He runs into the giant hedge maze. Not a mage. He's not like doing magic out here.
A giant hedge mage.
So it's a big maze, right? So Danny's running through, and it's completely covered in snow, right? Because of the storm. So
Yep.
Jack can track his feet, his footprints.
Right.
And Jack was like injured before when he fell on the steps. His like ankle is twisted. He can't
Yes.
really run or anything. So he's kind of limping behind on Danny's trail.
And he's also kind of regressed a little bit, like he's de-evolved. All he's like,
Yeah, he's
you know.
lurching and like
Right.
grunting and stuff. That's interesting.
It's
De-evolved.
bizarre. Yeah, right.
Yeah, he's very animalistic.
Uh-huh.
He's still saying like Danny and stuff like that.
Right.
But like
That's
don't know
about
if-
all he says.
I don't know
Like,
if he's just like exhausted, just everything adding up.
It's just
but-
system overload. Probably, yeah.
So Danny uses an old trick where he backtracks on his footprints,
Right.
So that he can't tell where he is, and it works. He tricks his dad. His
Yep.
dad follows the footprints to like a dead end, like where he has to pick, like go left, right, straight. He doesn't know.
And Danny had already like solved the hedge maze with his mom earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
So he had some experience with it, and he knows how to bring his dad into a corner, and he knows obviously the stakes of what's happening right now, and like when he actually emerges from the maze, Wendy is there with the new snowcat that Dick Halloran had, and it's running, and they get in it, and they can escape.
Yep. And so they drive away, and we just see Jack kind of lost in this maze.
Right.
As it's probably 0 degrees outside and screaming for Danny.
And he freezes to death.
Yeah, and I love it. We see him screaming and kind of looking around, confused and lost, and then it just cuts to morning, and he's like sitting there, covered, like piled up in snow, completely frozen.
Right.
Eyes open, just like staring straight ahead. His hair is frozen.
Yeah.
It's a great shot.
Yeah.
And it's just there for a second.
And then the last shot of the film is we go back into the hotel, and we push in on this row of this wall of photographs, framed photographs, and when they get to the one that is from 1921, July 4th ball at the Overlook Hotel, and it's a bunch of revelers, and right in the front center is Jack Torrance in
Yeah.
1920s clothing.
Mm-hmm.
You've
Yep.
always been there, Mr. Torrance.
Yeah. So I don't fully understand the meaning of this. It is interesting.
Mhm.
I like it. but I don't know why or what it means. Could you argue he is a ghost now that's there? He's like in that painting or in that photograph now because of what happened? Or was he really there somehow in the past?
There's a chance that like maybe you know how when they first go to the hotel and then a month passes and it just says, you know, a month later.
Yeah.
Like in that month, they must have gone exploring through the hotel and they must have seen every inch of it.
Mm-hmm.
So they have seen the photograph with Jack Torrance in it.
Maybe. I mean, it's tough when you go and look at all the photos on a wall. Like, say you go to like your old high school or something. They have the senior pictures and stuff,
Yeah.
like the class pictures. It's so hard to pick people out of there.
It is,
Like-
yes. I guess if it was for like, though, if that was all I had to do, if that was my only activity,
Yeah.
I'd probably like go
Yeah.
over it pretty meticulously.
Right. There's no Xbox. We established that.
Absolutely
So-
not. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could. I would probably look at every face in those pictures. I mean, yeah, there's nothing else to do. You're right.
Right. And it's not like an inconsistency or anything. I just think that it's more in line with your interpretation earlier of like maybe he wasn't in that picture until after he froze to death and became a ghost.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Right.
So, but then, yeah, I mean, you could go down a rabbit hole of all kinds of
course.
theories that all make just as no sense as the other one,
Yes.
you know? Because then why are the other ghosts all in the ballroom? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
We can figure it out somehow.
But we can't, right?
Or not. But yeah, that is the end of the movie.
Uh-huh.
Dave, do you have anything else?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I knew this would be probably the longest episode we ever did. I had a feeling, and because there's just a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it's a pretty long one.
Yes. I would like to say that in addition to this, there is another Shining adaptation.
Dr. Sleep?
No, it's
You mean the movie?
Yes,
The
yes.
TV movie?
The TV miniseries on
Yeah.
ABC. And it's one that like Stephen King had more say over, you know, what was in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's way more faithful to the book. And I don't think that a movie needs to be totally faithful to a book. You know, if someone adapts a book, you know, that's that. And there are things in the book that I didn't care for once I read it, namely the end where there is no hedge maze in the book. Instead, there's a bunch
Right.
of like animal-shaped topiary.
Mm-hmm.
And they come to life in the book and they attack, you know, during the climactic ending scene. That wouldn't have worked on film. It certainly doesn't work in that ABC miniseries in which it actually does take place.
Yeah.
It's not very effective.
That's why Kubrick didn't do it.
Yeah.
Because he's like, we can't make that work.
Right, exactly.
There's no way.
There's no way. Right.
We're doing a maze.
Yes, right. The only other thing I'll tell you is that like Rodney Asher's documentary Room 237 is well worth your time. There's some bullshit in it, but there's also some hardcore, super observant nerd stuff that I think everybody will really love.
Yeah.
One cool thing toward the end is that this guy Jay Weidner is talking about a project he did with a local theater where they screened the film and they did an overlay with the film running backwards concurrently with the screening. So they essentially had two film reels.
Okay.
And they played one forward and one backward, all projected on the same screen.
Wow.
So like as the movie opens and we're tracking through those mountains, you also see the photo of the Overlook's July 4th ball. And they do that for the whole movie. So it's playing
That's
backwards
cool.
while it plays forwards, and sometimes it lines up like in a haunting fashion. Like during the scene with Jack and Grady in the bathroom, you see Danny sneak into the caretaker suite to get his fire truck, and he's right between them, right between the two guys. And, you know, they're talking about he's a very willful boy, and it's like, oh, Jesus, God.
That's
and
awesome.
Danny's right there. It's obviously not the way the movie is supposed to be watched, but like it's still a real trip sometimes, and it's a cool experiment because they show this
Yeah.
visualization in the documentary as well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
We should do that with more films. That would be really fun
I
to
mean,
do. Let's watch this forwards and backwards
It made me
together.
think about like, you know, what it would be like for it would probably work with almost every movie.
I mean, we got like Dark Side of the Rainbow, right?
do.
And just all kinds
Yes,
of cool stuff.
all that stuff works. Yeah, and also the first time I saw a fake trailer online, it was for this movie.
Did I share it with you?
You may. I think
Or did you see it on your own?
I think I had seen it previously,
Okay.
but we probably talked about it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody, the way they did it, of course, was they took footage from the movie and rearranged everything so that it looks like an uplifting family comedy where a guy with writer's block marries a single mother, and we all learned something. And it was expertly done. And because I'm old, it's the kind of stuff I wish would still go viral today.
Yeah. Shining.
Yes. Dun, 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 dun.
Yep.
My heart going boom, boom, boom. Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, everybody check that out. Look at this video from 2005 and laugh all over again.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's so funny. There's also a Mrs. Doubtfire one.
It's
That's
also
like
very
a
good.
thriller.
Yes.
One man.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And at one
Who
point,
would do anything
pulling the mask off of his face.
to see his family. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are good
It's so
stuff,
cool,
man.
right, yes.
Yeah. All right, Dave. So, would you recommend this movie?
Please, everybody, go see The Shining if you haven't done so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome movie.
You have to see The Shining.
Yes, it is an
That's
essential.
all there is about it. Watch all of Kubrick's movies,
Yes.
dude. All of them. All right, so that wraps things up. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to our show anywhere you get your podcasts. Rate it, review it, and most of all, share it. That gets more dudes listening to the dudes. And you can go to dudesonmovies.com and find anything you need right there.
Yep, and we're on Facebook, Blue Sky, TikTok, and Instagram. Look for Dudes on Movies, and our email address is dudesonmovies@gmail.com.
That's right. And Dave, we have a question of the week. What is the question of the week?
What are the least faithful book-to-movie adaptations?
There you go. All right, hit us up and let us know your answers. And stay tuned next week when we wrap up Horror Month, Dave, with 1996's Scream, directed by Wes Craven and starring Nev Campbell. So until next week, I'm your dude Scott,
I'm your dude Dave.
and we'll see you next time.